p.m. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Would anyone like to lead us?
I'd be happy to.
Okay, Lenny.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, Lanny.
Thank you, sir, for the honor.
Order of agenda, I didn't see any changes. And so before I get into public comments, so our job tonight basically is to lock everything down. So we're going to start making sure we all agree on what we want to use ARPA for. We don't have to spend all the ARPA money, but that is a choice that we can make. The next is to talk about funding for the reserves for capital improvement. And then we'll tackle some of the sort of unfinished requests or items that have come our way. So hopefully we can move through that diligently. But we will start with public comment. So we'll start with people in the room and then people who are zooming in. If you'd like to speak, please either approach the microphone in the room or raise your hand on Zoom. You'll have 5 minutes to speak. No personal attacks. Please address the select board as a whole. So I'll open it up to the room first. Doesn't appear that we have any public comment in the room. Do we have anyone on Zoom?
We have one hand up, Martha Bartlett, but I think that might be Marcy Bartlett.
Marcy, is that you? We can bring Marcy over. Okay, Marcy, are you on?
Yep, this is Marcy Bart. Where am I here?
We can hear you.
Okay. Anyway, this is Marcy Bartlett from Wilder. Thanks for letting me speak. Appreciate all the work you're doing. And it seems like the budget process this year is running much more smoothly. And I do have a question on the ARPA funding. I'm looking at tonight's agenda as it pertains to some of the things that those monies seem to have been allocated for already. And I'm looking back to the 17th where I see 400,000 for Hartford Water, 400,000 for Quechee Water, 225 for Quechee Roads, bridge maintenance, Hartford Water, but nothing in Wilder. And this is something, as you know, that's been on my heart and mind for some while. And I am wondering what the scoop is.
Okay, thank you, Marcy. We do have some folks from Public Works here, and we could probably get into that when we talk about ARPA. Gail, if you have a comment.
Hi, Marcy. Thank you for calling in.
Hi, Gail.
Working with Public Works, they went through their priority projects that they have and items that are ready to go. And unfortunately, unfortunately, Wilder was not one of the projects that we've chosen right off. And but I can reassure you that we're working as best as we can to get through as many projects as we can.
I do see that there are those projects. Some are, I think you use the term shovel ready. So I'm encouraged by that to see some of those projects started, but I know that living in the village of Wilder, when there's water main breaks and we're all boiling our water, and sometimes it's elderly families who are without water for some while. So how are those other projects worse than the one in Wilder?
So Marcy, I have Chris Hallsworth here, and he's going to speak for a couple minutes regarding the projects.
Okay.
So with ARPA money, what we're looking for is what they want to use.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
So with ARPA money, there's a deadline to use the money, and we're trying to use it for the most productive reasons, which are shovel-ready projects where we have a savings by not borrowing the money to construct the projects.
through either the SRF loan process or bonding process. So we can save up to 20% on that installation. And those are projects that need funding for construction immediately. They're engineered and ready, permitted and ready to go.
Okay.
With the Hartford water system, in particular, the Wilder and Upper Terraces section, those sections require extensive engineering. We have in our budget request the money to start the engineering process on those. That process is a little bit timely. Engineers are in short supply and in big demand. And so we would like to get that process going through our self-funding. And once we have that, then we can scope out the proper funding sources for that. That depends on how they get rated on the priority list with the state. We hope it's high. But those are significantly larger than ARPA funds available, and that will require either an SRF loan or bonded.
I know that we don't have anything bonded this year. What, may I ask, what is an SRF loan?
State revolving fund loan. It's
Got it.
it's through a federally program, and there's many requirements. You have to go with the most qualified engineer, not necessarily the cheapest engineer. You have to have
Sure.
made in America. Lots of things that drive up the cost potentially.
Okay, so do you have in your expertise and your knowledge of these projects have a sense as to, are we in a 1 year, 5 year time frame? Do you have any sense at all on that?
For like, say, for Wilder, we're in a 1 to 2 year engineering, and then hopefully in the 3rd year bonded. Or
Okay. Sounds good to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcy. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Gail. Any other hands up on Zoom?
No more hands up.
Okay, no more hands up. So that will conclude our public comment. Our next item basically is budget reviews. So we're going to be having our final budget discussion, warning review and approval, and awarding contract. Gail's thankfully here actually entering numbers in real time as we make decisions. So we'll be able to get a good sense of what the overall budget is. My understanding is that where we really need to start is to just finish up ARPA and commit to what we want to fund with ARPA, understanding we don't have to spend it all. And then the other important thing is funding the reserves for capital improvement. So last time we did have a list. We kind of went through all the ARPA recommendations and we kind of cut it down to try, I guess, because it was more than the actual amount of funds that we had. So I think today, the question is, do we want to proceed with that? Do we want to just fund the minimum with ARPA that we need to? And I'll open that up for discussion. I think one thing we did vote, or at least informally agreed on, was that the public works projects, since they're basically ready to go, were ones that we wanted to fund with ARPA. And the other ones we kind of, split the difference on, like a police cruiser, have the proposed housing budget, remove the Willard Road study. And so I will open it up. What do we think? What do we want to do? What do we want to see with ARPA? Lanny?
Mr. Chairman, just to make sure we're all on the same page with our town manager, can you rattle off what it is that you have to make sure that we all have the same items as far as what we whittled it down to?
Could you be a little bit more?
Yeah, we start off this, we start off with the list that you gave us, and I know that we whittled some items off, but I want to make sure that I'm on the same page as you and the numbers add up right.
So what I took away from the meeting on the 17th for definite items was we moved for the police department, we moved the 14,500 from the employee wellness out of ARPA into the general fund operating.
Okay.
We moved the 75,000 for the cruiser for the police out of ARPA into the general fund.
I think we tabled the
So
training.
and then the only other thing that seemed to have the general consensus was the items on the first page of the ARPA funding, which involved the public works items. The rest of them, there was not a consensus by everybody
Okay, so that's not what I
on what you
assumed happened. So,
decided to do.
all right, so just those, all right, that's why I
So
want
those
to
are
make
the
sure.
only
that-
items that have been removed from the list and put into the general fund. There were 4 items that the board had asked for follow-up on, which all 4 of those items were provided to you. So the engineering, solid waste, PD, training, and the mowers.
Correct. Yep.
So you have all of that information. Those were kind of on the fence. You
Yep.
didn't have a general consensus, and you didn't want to make a decision until staff had the opportunity to provide you the information.
Yep.
I apologize if I missed in the middle of everything last week that you did actually make decisions on the rest of them, but that's what I walked
Okay,
away.
that's why I want to make sure that what Mike has is what you have, and it's not that way. So,
Well, we could, I think maybe we'll just go through and review them.
Yeah.
If that makes sense to everybody.
yeah, I
Alex?
totally
has her hand.
go over there.
Jim?
Kim, did you still want to say something?
No, I'll wait till you go through it. I was also gonna just say that I had a different list, but also I just want to mention that the audio is kind of a little choppy. I don't know if Dan, if you're experiencing the same thing. No, or maybe it's I'm gonna turn my camera off. Maybe that will help, but I'm only hearing like half of what's going on. Thanks.
That's good. All right, well, we're just gonna jump in then. I think we did have consensus on the DPW projects. We did have consensus on
Do you want the list?
The-
Is it important to list that?
if we could just keep
Okay.
track maybe. So the DPW, we did agree with the 14,500 for the police wellness, that's going into the general fund. And then I think we did agree we would do 1 cruiser instead of 2. So that would be 75,000. All right, so if we all take that as our baseline, I think we're pretty good. I do think there's probably some consensus on some of these items as we go through, but they shouldn't take that long. So I would say if we've got the list, if we want to start with Parks and Rec. So that was the $80,000 skid steer, the 72,000 for 2 electric mowing units, and then the 175 to 200,000 for Lyman Park improvements. I believe for Lyman Park, what we've been told is like you either fund it fully or you don't. It's not really one where it makes sense to take like a half measure on that one. So let's start wheeling and dealing. Lanny.
I would propose that we fund 1 electric mowing unit and 1 gas powered mowing unit. And I don't know what the cost of a gas.
It's not a
unit
gas,
would be.
there's not a gas unit on it.
I know, I understand.
So would we just fund 1 electric unit? And so that would be what, 36,000
Yeah, I would say,
as opposed to 72?
yeah, I would suggest that. I did do some research on my own on these electric units, and the numbers that were provided to us by Dana they come from a site that is promoting the use of electric mowers. So the costs are very inflated on there as far as like how much it takes to run a mower for an acre. It was 4.8 gallons to run a mower for 1 acre. And anybody that understands equipment knows that that's a ridiculous amount of gasoline. And it's more like at the most 2 quarts to run a mower for that much for 1 single acre. It's a rather small patch. So they're very inflated numbers. So I do not concur with those numbers. And you look on just a simple Google search will come up with a significantly different number as far as that. So that's why I'm proposing to go with 1 gas and 1 electric. And then we can see how the life expectancy is and the actual cost of ownership is.
Okay, Gail?
Can I ask if they're the industrial ones that you were looking at?
Yes.
So Scott Hausler is running a little bit late this morning, this evening, because he had another commitment to go to. So if you would like his input regarding that, he should be here shortly.
Okay,
But I
well-
just want to make sure that it's industrial.
Okay, let's skip that one and go to the police. We've already decided 1 police cruiser as opposed to 2. 14,500 employee wellness, that'll go into the general fund. Guess the question is 40,000 for the camera system and 88,000 for the virtual training. Dwayne?
When I looked through the 588 for the virtual interactive coursework and training academy, I looked at it all over. And when you look at something like this, it's a great thing to have. But I also have to ask, how do we get by without it in the past? And I'd love to hear that from the chief as far as how was this type of training achieved as opposed to this type of
So,
interactive training that we have now, that you're looking to get now.
yep, the updated quote too is 56,000 for it.
56,
We've got a
okay.
considerable amount of equipment out of it. Basically, we're ticking boxes. We're doing the minimum amount of training that we're required to do by our academy standards. It's better to do more training because then things become muscle memory. In the packet, you probably guys didn't have time to review it, but there is case law that states, and I don't want to read all of the case law to you, but I'll just give a couple of highlights. Court strongly suggests that law enforcement firearms training be valid and must be realistic. The court held that for law enforcement firearms training to be valid, it must incorporate stress, decision-making, attitude, knowledge, skills, shoot, don't shoot, moving targets, and officers are required to move low light or adverse low lights, shooting and in-service training. Currently, what we're doing is we are building out of tarps and strapping, and we're trying to make buildings down at our range. And quite often, when we're in inclement weather and we're doing those trainings, the walls are caving in on us while we're trying to do our training situations of our shoot and don't shoot situations. The other part of this particular piece of equipment, and I really encourage you to look at the links that are attached in the Word document. It shows they're not all use of force situations that this prepares us for. It teaches us how to interact with people with autism. And the trainer that is using the program while the officer is going through it, if the officer is using the proper techniques, they're able to switch the setting that the person that they're interacting with virtually responds in the way that the officer, if you're using the proper techniques, the person's going to be escalated. If you're not doing the proper techniques, the settings aren't going to work that way and the situation may escalate. And if then the officers go through, these are the different things you could have done. We don't necessarily have those abilities to do. It also does just basic mental health awareness training. And it's a lot of the verbal de-escalation skills that are being pushed that we need to train for. And we don't always have the opportunities to do those on a regular basis. It's once a year, taking a box.
Has this software been approved by like the FBI Training Academy by chance, or has it been approved for use by other police agencies?
Yes, so it's a nationally certified training system. It's the only simulation company with de-escalation training curriculum integrated into it. It's also used in 33 other countries. Each law enforcement training simulator is equipped with the interactive academy, all of the stuff that Lieutenant Howell was here discussing on Tuesday. And I'll be honest, today was the first time that I watched the videos and the links. I was amazed at what you can actually do with this program. The level of training that it provides, the basis of the training that is backed by case law. And one of the case laws that they have listed in their system, another one that drives a point home. Budgetary constraints are not a valid defense for litigation for failure to train. It illustrates the need for officers to, again, to shoot and don't shoot. So basically, we have 7 different case laws basically saying promoting this program and promoting the fact that officers have to train consistently. And basically, the motto of the academy is you train to build a muscle memory. So when you're in the situation, it's second nature. You're not having to think of what do I have to do? What are the steps I need to take? It's your second nature because you've trained it so much that it's what you do.
So you parse this down by close to 53,000. I mean $34,000 almost. How'd you manage to parse it down that much without taking away the vital aspects of what this program will provide?
So one of the things is when we got the original quote, we were carrying several different firearms. We all carry the same firearm. So it's now based on one firearm. So this system, for the parts of it that are based on our firearms training, it's for our handgun, our rifles, our less than lethal launcher. So it puts you in those situations where instead of, you're just going to your firearm, we have our 40 millimeter that we can deploy in the situation. It takes the equipment and we use our actual firearms, so we take our barrels out and things of that nature and insert their equipment into it. So we're still training with our actual equipment that we have. But we cut a lot out,
Yeah, I noticed, it had to be a
pare it
lot.
down. So we went down to, instead of, I'll be honest, I go for gold. If I'm gonna ask for something for our department, I'm gonna ask up here and hope for the best.
Yeah.
And you asked me to pare it down, and that's what we did. So we cut out any of the frivolous stuff that was nice pieces to have, such as so we cut out the piece that allows us to take our downtown and create our own situations. We removed that.
Sure.
But this is the bare bones piece of equipment.
Okay, thank you.
Kim has her hand up.
Kim?
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I also watched those videos and was very impressed with the program. And obviously we have a lot of weighing and prioritizing to do. And my thought is that if we are potentially looking at developing some sort of training facility for the public safety departments, that this would be an incredible piece to factor into that stage. And until then, I just feel like there's still other priorities that I feel like, including doing the public works solid waste study, that might be a place for a training facility for which this would be an amazing tool for. So I'm in favor of postponing this particular expense and not using ARPA for it. Thanks.
Okay.
I disagree with that. I think that, our forces out there actively now and all the time. I don't see why we should postpone training that, Kim, if you're saying seems valuable and useful, why we would postpone that for a hypothetical facility to be built down the road. Especially when we talk about the improvement of policing nationwide, but particularly, specifically within our community, having tools like this to me makes complete sense. And I think that the department has done a great job of chopping out almost 30% of that request. And I'm fully in support. I can't see why we would not want to provide training support for our officers, especially as we try to figure out ways to have social workers integrated in and just do everything we can so that our force can be best adapted to serving the public.
I see a show of hands, informally, people who would want this funded through ARPA. I think now with a $56,000 rate.
I think I think with all of the work that Connie's gone through with this,
Okay.
it's going to save us some money.
Okay, so informally, it was 6-1. So we will add that with ARPA. That's the virtual interactive training with that reduced price of somewhere in the 50,000.
Yeah,
56.
that's saleable at 56.
56 is the amount.
That's saleable.
And then, so the last item on the police is just the 40,000 for the camera system for the public safety building. Any thoughts on that? Okay.
Yeah, I'd like a better explanation of the need for that.
So this was,
Could you just identify yourself?
sorry,
for the record?
Dylan Walsh, IT Director. This was sort of my proposal from what I've seen. The system that we currently have, the vendor that was sort of the person repairing cameras, running cables, things of that nature. There was a personnel issue with that particular vendor. And so that sort of specialist is no longer with that company. And as such, the company has informed us that they are no longer supporting the system. And the manufacturer, because of the age of the system, has informed us that they don't support it either. And so we are sort of keeping everything running as long as we can, but the issue that I'm seeing is a hard drive failure that is highly likely. It's happened twice at this point. and we are running off of coax system versus IP based. So my goal would be to get everything, run new cabling. There are certain spots in public safety, particularly on the police side, for their rooms they question folks in. That's entirely a different system. So right now, dispatch has no visibility to that part of the room. And I know fire sometimes assists when certain people are brought in to get checked out for health reasons. And so I think it spans the entire building, all three departments, as well as, I'll give you a very particular example. There's certain times when state police, Windsor Police, Norwich Police, other agencies bring folks in. And I know dispatch has to pull video from every angle. So when they enter the building up until they are put in a holding cell, and then they are sent to released. And right now it's a very cumbersome way of doing things. They have to burn things to DVDs, and just from a maintenance standpoint, as well as a ease of use standpoint, we're running into licensing issues. So a lot of folks who I know should have access to the system no longer do. And based on sort of the preliminary research I've done, 40,000 is about the sweet spot for getting not more than we need, but kind of right in that right area of sort of bringing us up to the newer age of systems and capabilities.
How many cameras are we talking about?
So right now, I'm not sure the exact amount. I think we have about 35. But I know in speaking to the folks in the building that there are one or two other locations that a few blind spots and another sort of, I would call nice to have areas. So I think in total, we probably would be around 40. We haven't had an official site visit in quite a while. It's just kind of.
Are these fixed cameras or are they remote like what we have here in the room?
A lot of them are fixed. Some have two-way audio for holding cells and other things of that nature. There's one on the side of dispatch that rotates. I think if we could, they would love a license plate reader so they could just read license plates in the parking lot. And maybe one in the lobby that has a PTZ capability, but a lot of them would be
What is PTZ?
the motion that you see, so they can. It's usually fixed. Sometimes they're robotic, so these are robotic for these guys, but certain areas, but mostly fixed.
And I mean, what we have now works?
Yes, it works. Right now, selfishly from my department, it's very hard to manage. But I see it more of like a health and safety aspect. Right now, you have part of the building. Dispatch, for folks who have been in there, is sort of the central location for all visibility, holding cell, lobby. They have a separate screen strictly for cameras. And right now, they can't see, I would argue, a very large, important part of the building. And so I just worry from that aspect. And so that's, my goal was just to bring this to light as something that spans multiple, as my understanding as a candidate for ARPA would be spanning multiple departments across town, not just one very niche area, if you will. So yes, while the current system is working, and we can fix a lot of the things that go wrong, if it gets to a point of the hard drive dies or the system just totally dies, we're just going to be stuck kind of scrambling to get some sort of system up and running. So I'm trying to see if we can prevent that.
Is there a way to parse this down just to focus on the PD side of things for now and then do the fire side at a different time period?
From a technical standpoint, absolutely. I wouldn't want to make that decision without speaking with the folks in that building, because traditionally it's been sort of dispatch sees everything at once.
Well, the old system would still work, right? If you put in this new system for PD side, the old system would work for fire side?
From a technical standpoint, absolutely. You
Yes.
could roll out a certain amount of cameras and then slowly roll it across the building. So that is definitely possible.
And we don't have any idea as far as cost per camera then to do that. If we were to split the building and do just PD side.
It really, unfortunately, like a lot of vendors have different ways they price out certain things. So some do camera streams, so how many inputs your recorder has. Others do per camera itself. So it really depends on the vendor that you end up choosing.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
All right, show of hands on the 40,000. Ken.
Dan and Kim were taking the straw poll on the 40,000.
Okay,
Yeah. thumbs
looks
up
like
for them.
that's in 40K for the cameras. So just wrapping up the police here, but I think the ARPA, yes, yeah.
Scott Hauser's here now, and I'd like for him to have the opportunity to speak regarding the mowers.
I will. I just want to sum up what we got out of the police. So from ARPA for these police requests, one cruiser at 75,000, virtual training at 56,000, the camera system at 40,000. Okay. And then, yes, and Scott, so we started going down the list with Parks and Rec. And we had a question about, it was proposed that we fund one electric mowing unit with ARPA. So I don't know if you have thoughts about that.
I know you thought, I apologize.
Yeah, no,
for being
no
here at
problem.
the beginning of the meeting, sorry. And I might be looking at you kind of weird too, because you're a little fuzzy. So I know at the last meeting you talked about maybe funding one, so.
Yeah.
I mean, that's your decision, but whatever questions you have, I have to answer.
Right, so Lanny, you had mentioned earlier
Yeah.
about the pricing of it and.
Yeah, when I looked online today in its research, I come up with extremely different numbers when Dana proposed as far as like the fuel usage for mowers. I mean, I'm right on a site right now, and so John Deere commercial mower, I have a 11.5 gallon fuel tank, and right here it says our commercial mowers average 1.1 to 1.9 gallons an hour. So that's a far cry from the 4.8 something that was quoted from his information that he supplied through Gale. And the site that he went to is, of course, a site that is promoting the use of electric mowers over gas powered mowers or internal combustion. So it's going to try to lead you, in my opinion, towards going with an electric mower. And I propose getting one electric and one commercial internal combustion, and that way we could compare the actual cost of ownership over a period of, say, a year or two, to come back to the board to see in a real world scenario, which is better for us to do.
Yeah, I mean, I can't evaluate the data that he got. I know it came from UVM. And it seems like it's pretty, a good a site related to getting the data that you need in order to make a good decision, right? I didn't question really. The only thing I questioned based on the information that I gave him related to the chart and how he came up with some of those numbers. It's primarily related to how many hours we mow, and in a perfect world where we've got the best turf growth for 23, 24 weeks, where we're mowing 3 days a week to get all of our parks done, 6 hours, probably a day per mower. And that's because the grass is growing, it rains at night, and the sun's out in the day, and the grass is growing, we're fertilizing. It's the perfect world. So some of the costs as far as fuel costs in general, I felt that it was a little high, but I thought it was reasonable for us to identify what combustion petroleum product mowers can potentially cost us. We don't spend that much on fuel for mowers because we don't have that perfect scenario of grass growing at all times. The information related to pricing, I think, as far as the cost of mowers, I think they're, we're right on. Toro just released a unit back in 21 that they're getting out in the market, and it's around the same price as a Mean Green, but they're a green machine, but they're all, relatively new. So my philosophical thought on your decision would be it's probably a good idea, because we don't want to be the first one in the state, and we're not. The state of Vermont has purchased one of the green machines a couple of years ago when it first came out on the market. They don't have enough data to share with us as at this point, but I think it would be a smart move, not loading up on electric, not really having a lot of data points to make a good decision on the length of them. Will it go more than 10 years? Or right now, we rotate a grandstand, or the plan is to rotate a grandstand mower probably every 4 years with the intentions of getting 8 to 12 maybe years out of one particular mower. So,
So how would you feel about buying one electric to one internal combustion and putting them side by side and providing data to future boards to come back and
I mean, we would
say
do
this
the
is,
best we could. If we had one, we'd put it to work, right?
I'm just curious if the cycle time on the battery is long enough to get through a day's of mowing with
So-
electric mower.
Yeah,
too.
so one of the questions that we had asked Mean Green, Green Machine, when they came out, we did a demo. And I don't want to drag this out much, but one of the questions I had was that you see a lot of them now out, south of here, southern part of the country, out west. A lot of flat ground, not a lot of up and down and hills and all. And I really was concerned about the hours of operation, because it's supposed to last 7 hours of battery life. What we were hearing that after about 50% of use, 50% of that battery life, it starts to slow down a little bit, meaning that the revolutions of the mowing deck will slow down. So you're not going to be able to cut a lot of thick particular grass, right? So that's something that we're not quite sure about. But that was probably 1.5 years, 2 years ago that we did that. So things, batteries have changed too. So the industry is going that way, and it's going to be going that way. Toro had a maintenance workshop that we went to last spring when they brought their first unit out. They basically said, you're going to see these. This is what we're going to be selling in commercial applications. So it's going to be mowing with a battery operated.
Yeah, I'd like to see them put up head to head. Come back
Happy
in a
to do
couple
it if you
years.
want to give us the money for both.
I would prefer to give money for one electric mower and one internal combustion mower.
Do you need a
Put
second
them-
internal combustion mower? I mean,
So-
does it just
so-
make sense to do one electric?
So when we started talking about these, okay, we have our reserve fund,
Mhm.
okay? So 24 and 25 is, we'll be rotating them out. So we were thinking that, because we don't have to spend this, you have up to 3
Yeah.
years, right? So it wasn't necessary to get them tomorrow, if you gave us the check tomorrow, going out and buying them, so it was probably a smart idea too, that, okay, we purchased one electric and rotate one of the Toros out, and if we bought another Toro, fine. The next year, we don't need them tomorrow, but over the next 2-3 years, right, we'll be rotating two machines out, so.
Okay,
And by
so-
doing so, we'll be able to reduce the amount of money that's required to put into the reserve.
Correct. That
So if
was
the
big-
decision is made
Yeah.
to fund these 2 units in 24 and 25, we won't need to fund the reserves because they would be originally funding these products. So
Gotcha.
in the current budget that we have in front of you right now, there's a $30,000 deposit to go towards reserves for the purchase of these.
Gotcha.
And so this year in 24 and then in 25, we could zero that out.
If we do both.
That's correct.
Okay.
And Scott, are these, you've been talking about battery, but I'm assuming you're also talking about, these are solar that are,
Well,
or not?
you can actually, it's, the Green Machine does have a canopy that you can put a solar panel on the top. I'm not sure, we would have that conversation with them going forward to see whether or not it makes sense.
Okay.
I'm not sure of the timing of how much it replenishes the battery while you're operating it. So,
So we fund the 2, then we don't have to fund the reserve for the next.
For 2 years.
For 2 years. So I propose we fund both. Show of hands tentatively.
Well, Mr. Chair, I have a question on that. So kind of related to this, the skid steer, there are mowing attachments that would go with that as well.
Yeah, but not for, our turf grass, meaning our playing surfaces
Oh, I
and
see.
fields.
Yeah.
There's a unit that you can get that we would be interested in the future, because that machine will be around for quite a while, that, like a brush hog that you can put on the front to deal with some of your water retention areas that you're required to mow annually with stormwater permitting, so.
So I have any question for the board for Gail, I guess. If we support this $72,000, does this lock the Parks and Rec into having to buy the second electric mower? If we say we're going to dedicate this for 2 electric mowers, if the electric mower that he buys does not work out for some reason, he says they're not working for us, we have to be doing internal combustion. Is he locked into now buying a electric mower?
I would think if the product that we obtain is not working to the specifications that it needs to work at, I'm confident that Scott and his staff would make adjustments as necessary.
I just didn't know if by saying that we were going to spend it on this, if it locked us in as a board.
There's no legal obligation, right? But-
You're-
No, just,
What you're making what you're agreeing to doing is giving Scott the authority to purchase 2 mowers, with one of them, hopefully, if we can get one that fits to be an electric or hybrid mower. That's the goal, that at the end, his department needs 2 mowers. So that's kind of the board committing to him getting 2 mowers, one being that hopefully meets somewhat the climate action plan that we have in place.
so you're looking to buy 2 mowers this year, is that?
No,
But-
not this year, correct. We have a rotation reserve fund where, that we've been putting money into, and a amortization schedule related to all of our equipment, right? So there are 2 that are going to be up for rotation, one
In 24 and
one in
25.
24 and one in 25.
Okay.
So between now and 25, we won't be making those contributions to the reserve fund for the mowers. If that makes sense.
Let's hear from Dan, and then we can get a vote on whether we want to include this. Dan?
Thanks, Mike. I just want to remind people that, Dana is our expert here. So he's done some research, and I think we need to go with what he's recommended. And I also remind people that the voters voted for the climate action plan. So we have a deadline to help improve those things and move in that direction. And also that the $30,000 in reserve savings will help us out. So I'm 100% in support of this.
Thank you, Dan. All right, let's get a tentative sense in favor of 72 for the 2 mowers. Yep, we got 6 to 1, I believe. All right, so we are going to add 72,000 for the 2 electric mowers from Parks and Rec. So then there's the skid steer, that's 80,000. Could you just tell me again what that's intended for?
So the skid steer is a unit that has a variety of different attachments that can go on it, okay?
Yep.
We have a lot of applications where we currently have a Kubota tractor with the front end loader, okay? That tractor's, I can't remember on top of my head, but I mean, it's been through Irene, right? So it's
2007.
tired. We've actually had to replace one of the pistons just
Okay,
a few weeks ago. So it's tired. It's ready to be rotated. I think it's 7 years out from when it should have been retired, right? So talking with my staff, who run the machine, who manages our parks and our facilities, they recommended to me a couple years ago that we should really be looking at a skid steer piece of equipment based on the pathways that we maintain, based on all the uses that we have, a bucket loader for uses for cleanup around the ice arena, actually for removal of our ice at the end of every year. We actually rent a skid steer because our tractor's too big to maneuver and utilize for ice removal. So it made more sense and more practical if we had that unit, then we could utilize it for a variety of other purposes that the tractor's too large or doesn't have the capacity to do the work. So.
Okay. Board thoughts on this one, 80,000? Laney and then Rocket?
yeah, so what are you looking at for attachments with this?
So a bucket But actually, the bucket that we have for the Kubota will work because it's the quick connect if we get the Kubota unit. We already have the forks for it that we use. We're looking at potentially one of the, it's not called a brush hog, but it's a unit that we can use for all of our retention areas.
So you're gonna have live hydraulics on it.
Yep, hydraulics.
Live hydraulics.
And then there's a aeration type of tool that you can use for it as well.
But is this, what's included with this 80,000?
80,000 would be the attachment of the brush hog. And we have the bucket and we have the fork because it's a quick connection, a quick.
Yeah, Bobcat style, quick connect bucket, yeah.
Yeah, and it's.
Two forks that come down, yeah, yeah.
Roger?
Yeah, Scott, just a question on this. I was looking at the CIP spreadsheet
Yeah.
from your department, and this was something that was not funded, but needs to be replaced. I was just wondering, are there reserves that would be, obviously, if we don't fund it here, we're probably gonna have to set aside money for reserves, but are there reserves already allocated out for this?
So there are reserves in the park equipment reserve, correct? I think right now it's 70,000.
Correct. But that's the full 70,000 is not specifically designated
Right.
towards that project.
Is there any amount of that which would be reasonable to allocate towards this? Or, yeah, I'm understanding from your perspective, obviously, it's better if we fund the entire thing, but.
Yeah, I think that the answer that I can give operationally is the ARPA funding use of this allows us to, be ahead of it. So we're not waiting and being out 5, 10 years on a piece of equipment that we should have replaced, 5 or 10 years ago.
Sure.
So this gives us a jump start on our schedule of replacement.
Sure.
And that schedule of replacement often changes on a regular basis, right? Based on type of use and condition of and all, how it's being maintained, is it breaking down more and more, then we'll move it up in a few years. So that's not, we look at that every year and make adjustments. So.
Gotcha. I'm surprised with this.
Yeah, can I see it, Lanny?
Yeah, is this factoring in trade-in value on the tractor?
No, that doesn't factor in trading value.
Would you keep the
If
tractor
we-
then,
If
or?
we had the ARPA, we'd probably keep it for maybe put it out in Maxfield, just to potentially use to move dirt occasionally, so we're not hauling something all the time. But that's something we want to talk to Gail about and actually, see the value of it first.
Does that tractor have a mower deck on it? Is that got a mid-mount PTO?
No.
Can you use
It's
that
got
out to
a-
Maxfield
it's got a
for,
rear PTO.
and do you have a finish mower for that?
We don't have a flail mower or finish mower. No.
So could you utilize that for broad areas like Maxfield, put a bigger deck underneath it with a mid-mount
I mean, you could-
PTO?
You could, it was purchased with non-turf tires and also a lot of applications that we've been using that. It's kind of too big of a piece of equipment for some of the things that we do on our infields and ball fields and that type of thing. But
Is it underutilized, and by putting a set
No,
of turf
no, it's
tires?
not. It's not underutilized at all. We use the bucket, not daily, but I mean, it's used a lot. So
Just
that's the skid steer, and that's my staff talking. The staff that run the parks, that maintain the parks, that maintain all of our fields and specialty facilities and all. I'm listening to them. They're the boots on the ground, and this is a piece of equipment they say will make it more efficient, effective for us to do our job.
Thanks, Scott. Show of hands in support of the skid steer.
Yeah.
Sounds like
And
Kim
I can't.
can-
looks like 6
Not
to
if
1.
we're, yeah, not if we're gonna keep the other one.
Okay, so skid steer, 80,000 in ARPA. So that's going in. And then the final question, of course, is the big ticket item, and that's Lyman Park improvements. Ally?
Yeah, I have a question, Scott. If we were to, because the project is estimated at 175 to 200,000, if we were to say 175, I'm curious if there are other state grant opportunities, other things that might be able to support this particular project?
So there is a land water funds Conservation Fund grant to the state assisted grant. It's federal dollars to come down to the state of Vermont, and then we have an opportunity to apply for it. I think it ranges, at 20 to 50,000 maybe of what I've seen with some projects. It really depends on how many communities each time it comes around is applying for. Determines whether or not you win or get accepted for that grant. We've applied for a couple. So the Lava Arena project, the pool project, and didn't come, wasn't successful with it, so it's not a guarantee. There's our collaborative effort to do this project is going to involve a lot of stakeholders. We have been talking to the Special Needs Support Center. They use the park on a regular basis. They came to us and said, hey, can we do something to improve and enhance the use of playgrounds and provide something that's more accessible, and so they're willing to help fundraise. I mean, we will make an effort, an opportunity to try to reach out to those stakeholders to help us in the project, not only designing it, but also if we wanted to raise some extra money because maybe we want to purchase another piece of equipment to add to it, we'll certainly do that. So those opportunities are there, but not a guarantee, right? So,
Yeah.
So this is one of those projects, I think, thinking of ARPA, a lot of it, infrastructure, things like that, a lot of times people don't necessarily see actually the money that's going into infrastructure stuff. And I think this is an example of where people can actually see where the money went, have a tangible benefit for it. So I would be supportive of this, but certainly we can take a straw poll or other people can look their thoughts out.
Well, I just wanted to clarify, I'd be supportive of maybe 175 and starting there.
No, and I just had a quick question because on your liaison. Now, the whole idea of the working on the invasive species, that's separate. That wouldn't be included in this.
yeah, that's a separate.
Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much just dealing with the problem.
Right.
we got over there, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make that clear.
Yep.
Okay. Kim, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I think I just, we don't have enough to cover all of these things. I still hope we're gonna visit the idea of this solid waste facility transfer station study. And that would be a priority over this for me as well. So I mean, I think we all want to do all of this stuff, but we have to do the difficult part of we're going to have to narrow this list down, and I still have in mind that I want to add the transfer station onto it. So I'm going to probably do a thumbs down on this one as much as I would love it to happen.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. Rocket?
I agree with Kim, but I also think that something that came up last meeting, Friends of Queechee Bridge, they mentioned working closely in collaboration with your department, Scott. So I thought this might be, because the budget item is also similar size, and I don't know if you, while you're here, if you have a input on that as well. And I'm happy to give a quick update. I don't know when the right time would be to discuss that. It seems like kind of now. In partnership.
It's not Scott's project, so I'm not comfortable with Scott's.
Oh,
speaking
okay,
about
sure.
it.
Well, they had.
Yeah, we are their fiscal agents
Right.
for their fundraising efforts. So,
Right.
meaning that the town is the fiscal agent, Parks and Recreation helps them by receiving the funds and all. We have, it is a park, right? Queechee Falls Park is a park.
Right.
There's several private properties around that area that they have invested in to make some improvements. The parking lot side, we helped with that because that is kind of part of the park, right? The municipal
Right.
pieces of property. So that's kind of the relationship. I've helped them. We've talked, we're their fiscal agent. We have to communicate related to the project. And I've worked with Lori on as well with the group that has pitched this, but it's certainly a community driven project that the town obviously has a portion of land that is a parking area, and we did help do some beautification, and can it use more, and can that sidewalk extend down that area? Absolutely, but it's something that's gonna take some time, right?
And that's being driven by that 501c3. They mentioned that, yes, Parks and Rec are the fiscal agent, but also that the parking lot parcel was acquired by the town in 2013. And then they seem to be referencing improvements to the town's parcel that Quechee Lakes or the Friends of Quechee Bridge would be contributing. That $50,000 pledge in question would be contributed towards the town's undertaking of the improvement of that. But
Gil.
yes.
So we did talk about this the last meeting, and having spoke with staff regarding this particular area that they're mentioning, there's no concerns. It's fully functionable, and it's not something that we can support at the moment. I'd be curious, when you reached out to them, the $50,000 pledge that they had, was that dependent on did you get a response back if the town pledged 50,000 towards it? Would that be acceptable or not? Because I, as the finance director, and as I said, speaking with staff from Parks and Rec, from Public Works, and from the planning department, the current location, the way that it sits, there's not any health and safety needs regarding it. We also do not have a specific deadline to do improvements there.
Yeah, the point of contact there basically communicated that they wanted to see a good faith effort on the town's portion to fund this project, which they're estimating the number one, the project range is 200 to 225, but it's unclear as to where those numbers are really coming from, of which the $50,000 pledge would be contributed to that. So it seems that they are requesting that the town contributes basically the balance of that, which would be at this point 175, 150, 175, which is why I mentioned, because it's sort of the same. I think it's a bit expensive. So I'm sort of, and then I was a little confused too, because Parks and Rec was referenced, and as was town property. So I was thinking it almost seems like this should be something that would be internally, I was just lost in that communication.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, planning.
Can we settle up on this Lyman Park improvement?
We can.
Sure, yeah.
I think that was
Sorry,
a little off track.
had
I understand that they're sort of related, but all right. So we're gonna do a show of hands. 175 for Lyman Point Park, starting now. Looks like we've got 2 votes in favor,
Dan is.
5 against, so we will not be adding that.
Every one of these projects is an excellent project. But if we have
Lanny,
to
we
look
know
at
how
money
it works
behind.
with the voting, and
Well-
it's a good project. I know you support it, but there
No,
are other
no,
things the
I
money
don't
that they
support
could go
it. I don't. support
I know
it.
you believe it's a good idea,
Yeah.
right? And every project on here is a good idea. We're not going to agree on all of them. So no Lyman Point. For Parks and Rec, it's 72 for the mowers and 80 for the skid steer.
Correct.
And so our next item will be fire. I believe based on last time that we had agreed that the 450 to refurbish the truck,
We agree.
because that brings us considerable savings. I'm sorry, what's,
We
I'm just
agree.
confused. Can we just, with Scott still here, can we finish up on the Quechee covered bridge? Just,
are you making a proposal that we fund? the
no, I'm not.
project?
I was just, so are we just basically saying no, is that?
No, I mean, that's an extra business item, we can come to that at the end. That's not from a department.
Well,
So
was
we're
this-
doing the ARPA.
So
For
my
the fund.
confusion was that it was a citizen request or a citizen's request for ARPA funds. And then there was Parks and Rec was cited in it, including sort of a letter of support of the organization, not of the project. But of the
I mean,
organization.
what we need to do now, we can get to that later, is we just got to finish
Okay,
up with all the department requests.
Okay, sure.
And so we've nailed down, I think, Parks and Rec, police, fire was 450 for a refurbishment of engine 3. Ends up saving us quite a bit of money, I believe, down the road. Any objections on that one? Thumbs up, thumbs down?
Fully supportive.
All right, so 450 for the fire truck from the fire department. And that brings us to our last main sort of area is planning. And there are a couple things just off the bat that I had in my notes last time. I just want to. One was we wanted to take out 260,000 for the Willard Road scoping study. It's not a project we would fund with ARPA. Is that sort of the consensus everyone had from last meeting? Okay. And then I think the other consensus was, or at least a majority in favor of 150,000 for the Housing Development Reserve Fund. We still have consensus on that, or at least a majority. Mary, Rocket, Lanny, hands on the 150.
And then
Yes.
Dan and Kim.
I'm still on the fence about that.
Jill?
Can I give a recommendation as the finance director that you table that one and don't make a decision on it tonight?
Okay. We have a recommendation that we table that one. I'm perfectly happy with that. Thoughts? Everyone agree with the finance director recommendation? You want more info on this?
So we're saying not include that in ARPA whatsoever. Take
I'm
it out of
saying you
there.
don't need to make a decision on it this evening. I think that there should be more information that's provided regarding it, and there may be other items that do come up as we go through the discussions that those funds could be used for. I'm not,
Right.
again, I'm not saying that it's not a viable project, but I think it
And
would
if-
be my recommendation that you table it for the time
And
being.
if I'm right, Gail, maybe as that gets fleshed out, we can off-cycle spend.
You can do it
money.
at any time that you want, but I think having more information and more of a definitive timeline would be more.
I'm confused because I thought we were gonna like wrap up budget discussions this evening.
Not ARPA.
ARPA, you can spend it, and you just need to obligate it before the 24th, before 2024, December 31st, 2024.
Yeah.
These are recommendations
We
that
don't
have
have
come
to.
from the staff.
I would love further, more in-depth conversation, because it seems to be a fund for a new program, which would be great to support, but great to know more detail on. And since we have literally almost 2 years to earmark all of the ARPA.
I mean, it sounds like a really good idea. I would like some more info, sort of specifics on how this would work. I mean, it seems like helpful, but we can table it. We can always bring it back up. We don't have to wait another year to do it.
Correct. It's not something that
yeah.
that we're gonna pull the trigger on tomorrow.
Right.
Like some of the other items that we have that we can, start doing immediately. I think a little bit more of a discussion and a little bit more movement that would probably be the best.
Let's Lanny, and then let's come to consensus on whether we want to table that particular item.
Oh, well, yeah, I have a different one I want to talk about. So yeah, let's talk about that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be okay with tabling it. I'm already supportive of the 150, but I guess if we were going to table it, I would then just say out loud that maybe we would want to, and by the end of this conversation about ARPA tonight, not like agree to spend all of it, because I would still want to make space. Personally, I'd want to make space for the possibility of that 150,000 once we got more information. So I just want to throw that out there, that if we make that choice, that we would maybe have some wiggle room still with our ARPA decision tonight to make space for
Right, so
that.
maybe a vote to table it, but kind of earmark it just in case, and not pull the trigger on it versus on some of these other projects that are able to begin motion. Is that fair
Sounds
enough?
good.
And then come back and visit it, in 2 meetings from now.
Yeah, let me get some more info. Is everyone okay with tabling it then? I got it. All right, thumbs up. Lanny, I'm going line by line. This the
Yeah,
next
okay.
item, the parking meters. you
No,
wanna
no, no,
discuss?
sorry.
Okay,
I thought you were-
just so I don't get
Nope.
lost on it. So the 300,000, we're 150,000, we're tabling that right now. 233,000 for parking meters. Thoughts on that one, people? You know how I stand, so I'm just gonna let you guys figure this one out on your own.
I'm seeing thumbs up from.
Yeah, we're foolish if we don't do this. This is a return,
Comes down.
it's a return on investment.
I think it's a terrible idea, but I'm gonna go with the board. So tentative, who's in favor?
Definitely return on
3, 4,
investment.
5. Okay, 5-2. All right, so 233.
It's about time.
Mark my
right?
words on this one.
For the
everyone.
public, Joe Major just said yes in the audience.
I will be proven right eventually. All right, so that's good. All right, glad to get that one done.
So
The next,
You're currently you have a balance of 254,000.
in ARPA,
79 that you have left in ARPA as you look towards the rest of.
we
the
have
project.
254,000. That's for me.
$779.38.
So,
Can't have your cake and eat it too.
all right, so that leaves us, I think we all agreed we're taking out the Willard Road, 260,000, particularly since we're getting towards the end of this ARPA. So there's the Sykes Mountain Avenue, there's the Queechee West Hartford Bridge, and there's the West Hartford Route 14 improvements. Lanny?
Yeah, I personally would like to hear from public safety on the Queechee West Hartford Bridge bike pedestrian improvements as far as safety concerns. If you guys can address those, if you think there's something to address.
Any real safety concerns that are out there with the
Okay, I would say no.
Do we feel like with the balance of ARPA that we want to leave some amount of cushion? Because, you know, we still may be thinking about the 150 for the housing at some point. Are there any of these remaining ones, Queechee, West Hartford, Sykes Mountain, or West Hartford, that we feel strongly enough that we want to obligate ARPA funds? Or we want to call it a day and keep our 250,000? Gail?
I recommend before you call it a day, that the solid waste facility, the information that the Public Works put together regarding the assessment of the facility is going to cost about $100,000.
Okay.
So before you call it a day, I strongly would recommend that you consider that coming out of the ARPA funding. And I know it's something that probably Kim wants to talk about as
Yeah.
well, but the staff did do the work. And if we don't want to kick the can anymore, then we need to commit those funds and let them start getting to work on it.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would say no on the Queechee West Hartford Bridge, but I would say yes on the Route 14 bike pedestrian improvements because of the fact that that is a lot of traffic there with people swimming and crossing the road for AT. So I would say yes on that one.
Well, I think that's actually.
Ellie, I'm sorry. Did you have a hand? Someone had a hand up.
Well, Kim has a hand up, but responding to that, Lanny, I'm on the fence about the West Hartford Route 14, but also the Queechee West Hartford Bridge, that's $8,500. And I wonder if that's a pretty small amount, all things considered, and if we wouldn't find that elsewhere. So I'd be supportive
Want
of.
to fund that as opposed to the Route 14?
But that's why I asked about if it was a safety concern. That's why, I mean, if I had heard that it was, I would definitely support it, but seeing it's not, I don't know if it's worth the cost of it.
So let's hear from Kim and then Rocket. Maybe we want to discuss the solid waste survey
And Lori.
first and then come back to these other items. Doesn't matter. Kim?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to echo what Gail just said, and appreciate that. Like, I want us to visit that as an option for ARPA funding. So just, I think you know how I feel.
And Rocket, and then Lori has her hand up.
So as a regular swimmer, which caused a little ruckus with public safety the other day on accident, thank you for the care and concern. The West Hartford Bridge, actually, Laney, I think your point about people crossing to swim, the bridge itself is actually quite narrow because you have the pull off where people go down the trail to the park, and then you have the swimming on the other side as well. There's another pull off. So that bridge is pretty heavily trafficked. I think my understanding is the Route 14 bike path pedestrian is sort of east-west. Is it along, or is that north-south alongside 14 there? So I would be in support of the bridge itself having some repainting there, just also because that part specifically is ATM. So you have people with their backpacks coming across. It just seems like just because there haven't been issues yet doesn't mean that. I just don't think there's I think it would be wise to be prudent given the narrowness of that bridge itself.
Thanks, Rocket.
But
Lori?
with Laney's rationale.
Lori, if you want to comment.
I would echo, that was what I was going to say. I believe that is an area that's very narrow. There is a lot of AT traffic and just general public traffic and vehicular traffic over that bridge. The intent of the scoping studies that we did for the West Hartford Village area was to identify those areas that people felt within the community warranted being addressed, in the very narrowness of those travel lanes, of the shoulders in comparison to the amount of traffic going on the travel lanes, is something that was highlighted. So there may not be accidents that are being reported there, but I don't think that necessarily tells the whole picture as to whether or not people feel like they have a safe passage when there's only 2 feet. So
Thanks, Lori. So what are we thinking? What do people think if we did the Sites Mountain and the bridge? And we left the West Hartford Route 14 improvements off? Just a thought.
Supportive.
Not,
Ellie?
I don't mean to jump around, but I know I also kind of have on my priority list, the solid waste
Yep.
conversation, which is a big one. So I don't know how the board would feel about going to that item and then coming back and then looking through some of these other planning and development items. I don't mean to bump planning and development, but
Right.
because that is 100,000. That's on the
So it's
table.
100,000 for the proposed survey, right, for the solid waste. I
Correct.
think if we did that and we came to a decision either way, we would know on these last 3 items like how much funding we have left. So we
That's
may want to just jump right to the solid waste study. Is that okay with everybody? At least a majority, got 2 there.
Sure.
Okay. All right.
100,000 for solid waste.
It's 100,000 for solid waste. I don't know if Chris, I think you sent we had a memo.
I did, yep, I did
You
send
sent
the
it.
information. Does anybody have specific questions regarding it? Because Chris and Aaron may be here that can speak to it.
Yeah. Lanny?
yeah, what are we basically gonna get out of this?
So first of all, thanks for even considering it, because I believe it was several years ago, we did an RFQ process to get solid waste professionals rated and on board so we could do this, but weren't able to get it into previous budgets. So on short notice, as you know, all engineers are in short supply, and coming up with a detailed, this is a order of magnitude budget they've provided from our highest ranked professionals. And we've narrowed it down to, it's really going to be pretty broad and encompassing because we don't know what we're going to do with the facility. We have physical needs down there that we need to know. If we're going to mothball the facility, how we're going to mothball it and stabilize the site. If we're going to lease the facility, we need to know how to stabilize the site and reconstruct roadways and the porches getting undermined and so forth. There's roofs that need repairing. There are other potential hazards, I'm not going to say publicly, on the site. Those all need to be addressed. And that takes a level of detail on-site study, surveying, even need some borings to fully analyze it. So there's that, and then there's the feasibility to help us determine if we lease it, how much do we have to lease the facility for in order for us to break even? If we keep it open, is it viable? So it's pretty all encompassing. The amount of money, it's not a 30,000 foot in the air, it's down closer to ground level. But the business plan part of it is pretty broad range because, as you know, that marketplace is ever evolving and subject to many mandates and so forth. So that one's hard to narrow down. But it is a very it's a budget that's supposed to be intended to have a very comprehensive and not as narrow range to give us flexibility to reuse the site, to lease the site, or close the site.
So this will give us the path forward.
This will assist us in the path forward. The path forward will be risk-based and it'll be us to decide what the risks are, how great those risks are. People can back out of leases and terminate leases, and you can be stuck with carrying costs and have to reopen it. You can keep it under current conditions open and assume that your rates are going to be X and you're going to draw a certain number of customers. However, the marketplace may dictate that you have to charge even more than you're anticipating, like we're currently under. And then that can drive customers out to Lebanon, and then so that can go away. But right now we are currently in some early talks. I can't talk about them because of agreements, but we need a lot of this information to even proceed with those conversations to know what we have to fix in order to lease the site.
What would be the time frame to get this done?
in order to be attractive to the engineers, we mentioned 1 to 2 years.
And this won't inflate in 2 years? Cost?
Well, if we get them under contract now and hold them to the contract for a 2-year contract instead of a 1-year contract, then, and get the things out of the way, such as the soil borings, which they don't control the direct cost of, then
So that'll be an additional cost to us.
no, the soil
Okay.
borings are within their
Right.
magnitude of cost.
So this is something that's expensive, but I don't see that we have a lot of option to. We have to do something about this, so I'm gonna have to support it. I mean, it's gonna probably, it's $100,000 to say we have to spend probably 500,000 to close the place, but we're gonna have the.
Yeah, I think it's important to have the survey done, just so we know what we're dealing with and which way we want to go and what it's gonna cost us to go in a particular direction. So let's see a show of hands, 100,000 for this study.
We gotta do it.
Yeah,
Well,
that's unanimous.
A quick question to Gail and to Chris. The range was 75 to 100. Is it more prudent for us to come at 75, or is it?
No.
When you're given a range by an engineer, you know that there's a comfort level and I really think you're gonna get there.
Okay.
So.
Thank you, Chris. So 100,000 for the solid waste survey, and that leaves us with how much?
154, 779, 38.
So that leaves us with 154,000. We've tabled 150 that we may want to give when we learn more about the housing fund. So not a lot to work with on the remaining planning items, I don't think. What do people feel? Are we done with that now that we know we got 154,000 left, and approving any of the remaining projects is going to cut in some amount to the amount that we think we may want to put to the housing. Alec?
Just Kim has her hand up.
Yo, Kim?
Thanks. Just as part of the process, I know we don't have a communications person, but it would be really great if there could be sort of a easy to digest sort of bulleted announcement of what the town is spending its ARPA money on as part of our just communications, basically with the community, like be really clear about this is what we're spending our ARPA dollars on so that people know.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. and It's something that I think can come from us or maybe from staff. We can discuss that.
I'm fairly confident that I'm capable of doing that.
Yeah,
and I'll put it
absolutely.
together and give it to
Fantastic.
Paula
So
and
we-
the other departments.
Yeah, okay. So Rocket then Ally.
Just, Gail, quick question, scoring up the numbers here. First, I saw news from VLCT that we might have gotten a little extra ARPA money, but the emphasis might be on little. That was last month. I guess there were a couple governments in Windham County that didn't get.
The number that I provided to you was the number
was
that
the
we had
most updated?
received as
Okay.
of the bank statement of 12/31.
Okay, great. And then so just looking at the numbers, I have 300-ish remaining, and I don't know why that's not, why,
Did you
what
put
I,
the 150 in
the 150,
for the housing development?
no. So I have 1 point,
So if you put the 150 in, that will bring you down to 154. Because we're earmarking the 150. You have 80 for the skid steer.
We're earmarking the 150, then we do have.
You're marking the 150 for the housing.
154.
Correct.
Oh, I see. Okay, so
So
that's
that
my
brings you to
difference.
the 154.
So we do have 154 left if we want to tackle some of the remaining planning
But I
items.
thought we weren't gonna talk about housing development today.
But
Just held to the side.
we're holding it aside so that we might fund that later on once we learn more about the program. Ally, other question? or comment?
Yeah, I mean, because then the other thing that we had been talking about, which I'm definitely supportive of, is funding the community safety review.
Mhm.
And Kim, I don't know if you thought more about that number. I think that was maybe something you were going to think about and bring back to this meeting. But I know we had discussed somewhere in the range of like 50 or 60,000. And I don't want to lose sight of that because I think that that's a really important process to go through. But Kim, you have your hand up.
Go Kim and then Gail.
Yeah, I mean, if I whether it's general fund or ARPA, was officially requested to come through ARPA. And so either way, and I won't have, I mean, until we receive proposals, we won't know how much it's going to cost. But just based on the ones that we know of for other Vermont towns that have been received, I think using 50,000 is a goal.
Gail,
So the 50,000 is already included in the budget. It's outlined in the summary that I included last night. It is in 10-121-318.
okay.
Oh, so now it's in the general fund?
It is in the general fund.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, so we have 154,000 left. And we have a few items on planning. Let's just figure out if we want to do any of these. There's the Sykes Mountain Avenue project, Queechee West Hartford Bridge, and the Route 14. Any thoughts on any of those, or you want to take them one by one? Mary?
I'm with Lanny and I'm supportive of the West Hartford Route 14 bike pedestrian because I've been there several times as a hiker. And it is pretty rough and needs a little bit more safety with what the proposal is. It's just my thought.
Okay, so we haven't really talked about the Sykes Mountain project. Is that just one that?
I thought we,
You nixed that one
Yeah.
along with the
Oh.
Queechee Village scoping.
Okay, so we did nix
The
that one.
engineering
Oh, okay,
assessment. Yeah,
thank you
those were the two
so
that I
much.
did have that you.
Great, so it's the bridge and Route 14. The bridge is $8,500. I think we've heard from Lori and from Rocket that it seems like it might be worthwhile to repair that. We have thoughts on that, consensus on whether we want to spend $8,500 on the bridge. All those in favor, raise their hand. Okay, so I think it's 5-2. So from planning, we will add the $8,500 for the Queechee West Hartford Bridge. And that brings us finally to the Route 14. Any thoughts or discussion on that one? Do we want to? So now we've got roughly 146,000 left. We want to keep a cushion, or do we feel like that's enough of a priority? We want to fund that. Annie?
I personally believe that Route 14 ped bike improvement is much higher priority than the bridge. So
So you would support
I'm
that?
still supporting that with Mary.
Can we ask Lori where that is on Route 14 again?
She mentioned it before. So if you know where the library is and it goes down to where the red store used to be, it's like that area. You know, people park on the side and go down. They go fishing or they go swimming. And so it's that area. And like you said, there are some areas that, well, it's heavily trafficked by the Appalachian Trail hikers. It is an area, you know, if you've driven down there, there's not a sidewalk. The roads are sort of in, I won't say disrepair, but they're not great, you know, and it's a high traffic. Well, it's a high speed limit area generally.
Due to the nature alone of having the AT traffic in there, I think makes it a priority for me.
Yeah, and you'll notice in the summer, people park all along the sides there to go down. They don't go over to Clifford Park and walk them, but they go all on the sides of the road. So, all right, so let's see. What do people think of the Route 14? All those in favor, give me a show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, so we will add the 36,000 for Route 14. And then if I can just go over what I've got, at least we can compare it to what Gail and Paula have. Yes,
Can I
Lynn?
hold you up just a second there, though? Okay, so I just want to make clear that right now we're proposing nothing happening in Queechee.
Right now, well, didn't we do for ARPA, aren't
Yeah.
some of the projects for DPW and Queechee?
Box culvert, yeah, that's box culvert, but
Yeah,
No, no.
there's some other ones for Queechee, the roads project, well, that's the box culvert. And the
Yeah.
water, right? Isn't there a water funding for one of
Okay.
those programs? Yeah,
okay, all right.
all right, so let me just review, make sure we're all on the same page going down the list. So for Parks and Rec, 72,000 for the mowers, 80,000 for the skid steer. Police, 75 for one cruiser, 56,000 for the virtual trainer, and 40,000 for cameras. Fire is the 450,000 to refurbish the truck. Planning is 233,000 for parking meters. We have 150,000 set sort of aside earmarked that's basically not being spent, but we may spend that on the housing program once we learn more. 8,500 for Queechee West Hartford Bridge, 36,000 for Route 14. And then finally, we had the solid waste survey, which is 100,000.
That's what I have,
Which brings us to a grand total left of
110,000, 279.38,
110, what?
279.38.
Okay.
Gail, that's still in addition to the potential housing earmark?
Yes.
Yes.
After it.
Okay, and we cannot settle that tonight, right?
We
Right.
don't have to.
We don't
I
have
don't
to.
recommend that you do. I
Yeah.
think that we have better use of our time this evening.
Yep. All right. So I think that's the ARPA funding.
We didn't want to take some of the stuff that we had intended for CIP, and
Well, we're going to talk about CIP, the reserves next.
but I didn't know if we want to take some of that stuff and put it in ARPA. So,
We already did what we were
Okay.
going to do for those projects.
so ARPA's completely finished.
I think
Yes,
we're
we're
good
done
for
with that. So the
ARPA.
next step is to look at the CIP projects that we have that are already listed in the budget at the end of the book. And then you have the two projects that Lori had recommended for ARPA that are not included in the general fund. So those two projects, one is the Queechee Village, Willard Road to the covered bridge, the engineering. That requires either $87,000 a year for reserve deposits, or you don't choose to fund that project at all this year.
Okay.
So step one is to look at the current reserve deposits that we have and make sure that we want to fund them, which is part of the CIP projects, which is the department has provided you a list of all their projects. And then we have the ones that were not chosen through ARPA to determine if you would like to add them or not.
Okay. We want to take a break before we do the reserves.
Yes.
5 minutes.
Before we move off of ARPA, I think I've already voiced that I'm probably not supportive of the Queechee Bridge, but I do want to honor the fact that we had that conversation with them. Does it sound like, and then also Lanny, I know you had brought up the flags, the hometown hero flags.
That's further down
And
the
that's
list.
part of the operating, that's
Yeah.
not. part of
Operating,
ARPA.
not ARPA.
Yeah.
So
So
then-
what we'll do is once we do the reserves and talk about some of those projects that Gil mentioned, then we can, our cleanup, like our final last thing is going to be the stuff like that.
Okay.
Sort of requests that were made for either general fund or ARPA.
We can leave that 11,000 out there just sitting for what, till 3 years?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
We can leave the 11,000 in ARPA funds.
110,000?
110,000. We can leave that sitting out there.
You need to obligate it
looking at
before
next year.
December 31st, 2024, and it
Okay.
needs to be expended before 12/31/2020.
Yeah,
So
so
we
we do have that, and
We
like
got
Gil mentioned, we don't have to wait for a particular cycle if there's something we do want.
We can do it
So it's
in-
probably good we have a little bit
Okay.
left. All right, well, let's take a 5-minute break till about 35 past, and then we'll get back on this. All right. Okay, everyone, we're back from our break. Our next item is we're going to review the request for the reserve funding. If you have your updated packets that were given to us, that starts on page 63 and goes to page 64. And so I guess the question is, how do we feel about the amounts that have been requested? We can look at all those. Anyone have any questions about the amount of reserves?
Gotta get there first.
Okay. Yeah, they start on the 10-921s.
You do need to zero out the one for Parks and Recreation for the 30,000.
Yep.
You made the decision to fund. So that line number is 10-921, 521-0100.
Excellent.
Page 63.
I mean, I guess the question
It's
is,
the new book.
are there any of these reserves that we have a question about? You have a question about?
So supporting documentation has been provided for all of them that are in here.
Yeah.
If you don't have questions on the ones that are in here, we do have a couple items that we would like for discussion to decide whether or not you would like to have them added.
Yeah.
One of those is the engineering reserves that we've been talking about and
Yep.
provided you information on that. And then the other two items are items for the planning department that were initially provided when the budget process started, which would require town match on an annual basis. So the board will need to decide whether or not those are projects that they would like to fund or not.
Okay, thank you, Gail. Lanny?
Gail, can you just tell us where we're at for a grand total right now before we have those numbers? And tell us what the impact would be on the tax rate, please? I think that's important to going forward.
Sure. So the way that the budget sits after we added the two new petitions that came in today, took out the 30,000 for the reserves for the Parks and Recreation. It sits right now that we have to raise 15,121,137.08 in property tax revenue.
Well, that's good.
That is 0.0238 increase cents.
Excellent.
Wow.
So 2.27%.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah. So on these ones that are in the book, these reserves, does anyone have any questions about those or objections? So I think we could probably just give them the thumbs up pretty quickly unless there's a desire for further discussion on any of them.
Does Kim or Dan have their hands up?
Yep, Kim does, thank you.
Kim?
Yeah, Gail, I know you, I asked about this before and you answered, but I can't remember where it stands in the highway reserve, the 921, 544, 0321. It's at 0 and the narrative says discussion for future projects. Is that, can you just refresh me on that?
Could you read the number again? I apologize.
10-921, 544, 0321.
Correct. So that notation that I put in there, the original funding that we funded in 21, 22, and what we have in 23 was the town match for the VA cutoff bridge. Correct. So as we work through the CIP process and the ARPA funding process, we don't need to fund that particular line because we found other funding sources to fill that.
Okay, and then the funds that had been put in there, and again, I know you've already clarified this, but I don't have all of my files here. Was that, those weren't just put into the unassigned fund, right? Have they been allocated in other ways for the 24 budget?
They have been. So with the original proposal that was put together for the 24 budget included $500,000 for the paving project, paving reserve. It also included several other projects. Based on the changes that were agreed upon by the board this evening, that now allows a reserve of $775,000 for the paving to begin in 2024.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Any questions? Are we okay with these as presented to us?
I just
Mary?
have a quick question. When you sent those reserve balances today, what do we do with those? Since I'm unfamiliar with this.
You don't do it, you as a board don't do anything with
Okay.
them, but as I gave you an outline of the amounts, each department head mainly affected is Public Works and how they're using them. And then each other department
Right.
gave you an outline of how they're going to be expending those funds. So that gives you an idea of what we have in reserves, if it's already been earmarked, and if not, then it's being used for a future use.
Okay, great, thank you.
Just,
Any question?
yeah, just, yeah, when did you send that out? I'm sorry, there's so much emails here. So,
Today.
yeah, what time was it?
Which thing
Which
are you
email?
talking about?
The email talking about what Mary's referencing.
The reserve
Yes,
balances?
the reserve balances.
Probably 2 weeks ago.
Oh, 2 weeks ago. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was
Yeah.
something that was 75
I'm,
for each.
Oh, this,
today.
That's, we're gonna talk about engineering reserves.
Okay.
So that's something different. That's
Okay.
a
all right. Yeah,
recommendation
I was
that
wondering
we-
what, that's
Okay.
why I'm up to speed now. I couldn't quite follow where you were. Coming today.
All right,
Okay,
show
thank
of
you.
hands, we're good with these reserves.
and then we
Anything
have,
to say?
um,
Dan, Kim, we good with the reserve amounts? Okay, we're good.
Okay, perfect. So let's tackle probably the easiest one out of the next ones that we have.
Okay.
There's been discussion about the need for engineering reserves.
Yep.
After having a discussion with Public Works, you do have a copy of their recommendations that they have here.
Mhm.
And so Fund 10 is the biggest one that we're talking about tonight. The other enterprise departments, we would like to have a reserve for engineering in those as well. Those are much easier. They don't go to the voters for approval, so, and they don't impact the tax rate.
Oh. okay.
So what we'd like to discuss tonight is funding a engineering reserve and start at a minimum, the minimum at 50 a year. We recommend we can do 75 a year, but certainly the board's been very generous with the budget this year. So
Okay. So engineering reserves, questions or discussion on that? We have a number of 50 or maybe 75? People have thoughts? I mean, it sounds like it would probably be a good idea to have that, those funds go in for engineering.
I'm supportive.
Supportive.
So if we did this, what would be the impact on the taxes?
Yeah, hold on. Kim and then Lanny will have a question. Kim?
I just, yeah, I think if like the 75 amount still is probably going to take 2 years to even fund a single engineering study. So I would be in favor of the larger amount because I don't know that the difference between 50 and 75 is going to make a substantial impact on the tax rate at this point.
Okay. So you would say 75 is sort of what you would
Yeah.
recommend? Okay.
For which one?
Yeah, for the engineering.
For which one? No, for which?
we're speaking specifically about Fund 10.
For Fund 10. Okay, that's. So well, first off, I'd like to know with what's here, what it's going to raise the tax rate to, and then jump it up another 25, what impact it does have. I mean, we can say it has minimal impact, but until we have the number.
We can
It's,
find out what 75 would be to the tax rate.
it's
Sort of question.
very low. I mean, it's 25 over 18.5 million, 18 million. Like 0.130%.
So that puts it to 15,196, 137. So that's a change of 2.78%, which is in dollars and cents is 0.0291. That's 75,000.
Okay, based on per $100 of value in a home. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
So we're sitting at 2.27, and then with this change, it'd be 2.78% increase year over year of the rate.
Okay.
Okay,
I'm good. I'm good with 75.
everybody good with 75? Little show of hands. Kim, do you have a question?
Sorry, I can't, I don't know what. I mean, I think this is the kind of thing, particularly in Fund 10, but also in the enterprise funds as well, that it is easy to look at every year. And if it hasn't been used the previous year, then the next subsequent year could be a pretty easy decision as to whether to fund it or not, or have it in reserve. Anyway, I'm in favor of 75 for all of them. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, Lenny?
Yeah, just have a question. Is this sustainable on a yearly basis?
That's a decision that the board needs to make, whether or not they want to invest in the projects. And I think it's been an ongoing discussion for many years about, as the boards change, motivations change and projects change. So I'm hopeful that this will be something that will be sustainable. The taxpayers are going to have to pay for it either all at once and take the big hit, or they're going to need to fund it over years, like they do with all of the other projects.
No, I understand. I just want to make sure that it's a sustainable, sustainable over a period of time. Yeah, I'm fine with 75, but if we're asking for 25, I don't know why we need to change those.
Kim, did you have a comment or question?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, like, for context, there's been this sort of catch-22 in my perspective, in that there was a time when some members of the board felt as though it wasn't a good idea to do engineering on a project unless the town was committed to do the project. But obviously, you can't bond and ask the voters for approval to do a project unless it's engineered and we have a reasonable estimate. So it was this sort of, I guess the only thing that I would bring to the attention is that whatever DPW chooses to do the engineering project on should be the kinds of things that are not optional. There are things like the Hartford Ave and Wilder water systems and things of the nature that are like critical infrastructure. So we wouldn't be doing engineering on the kinds of projects that the board may or may not decide to do, but things that need to be done. I don't know if that helps to make context, but basically we're going to have to do engineering in order to be able to complete projects. And we've had sort of a log jam on that. Thanks.
Thanks, Kim. Chris, I got a quick comment.
Yeah, I'll make a quick comment. So since I've been here, which I know is not long term, we haven't had this line item and this reserve available. It's prevented us from being forward thinking and taking action on things such as Hartford Ave. We've always had to try to forecast the cost of the whole project, then get permission to take some of that money for engineering. And that projection cost, like for instance, Quechee Main Street Water Main, was way off. And then you're really short on those funds. I can guarantee you that just the immediate needs of our water and sewer and highway infrastructure can use these funds in non-frivolous ways. These aren't it's forward thinking at this point, just to take care of what we have that's deficient. If we had enough money, we would develop an entire master plan with an asset management plan to go through and redo everything that needs to be redone. But at this point, we can't afford that. So we're going to have to scale back some of that complete master planning and focus on areas, first of all, like Hartford Ave and the offshoots from it. But I can guarantee you that you will approve any contract and project that we sign up for. But in order to even be forward thinking and get to that, we need to have the availability of funds.
Great. Thanks, Chris. All right, so reserve 75, we're okay with this one?
I just have a question.
Lenny, okay.
Yeah, just a question about how far in advance of a project are we going to try to get an engineering study done? Because I'm not concerned about the engineering study changing. Well, in a way, I guess I am, because you never know what their government requirements or the state requirements might be coming down the road in 3 years that would put a change that would proceed going back again. So how is that taken into account when we look at engineering studies for projects? Because the requirements constantly changing in the world around us.
Well, at this point, everything we're doing is reactionary, so we're late to the game. So
Right.
we can only react as much as we have funds in bonding or borrowing capacity. Ultimately, you will decide what bonding capacity or borrowing capacity you want to eat up of the towns with these projects. But at this point, I would not be concerned about we're doing the engineering too soon. Like I said, we're going to be doing the Hartford Ave engineering. Then we're going to be right back here once we have forecasts saying we need to look at bonding, borrowing X amount of money, right? Right after that, we're going to be looking at the upper terraces. And then soon after that, we're going to tell you, we need more money. We need to borrow and bond more money because we have other issues that are maybe not popping up leaks as much, but presenting water quality issues and distribution issues. This town has a lot of neglected infrastructure, and these amounts, what we're asking for in reserve, those are small amounts. And that's based on using it up pretty fast as we go along. And, you know, we may have to take savings from other places and add to it in order to get some of these things done. But we got to start somewhere.
I guess
Thank you, Chris.
that doesn't answer my question though, about if the state comes back and changes a standard.
The state changes the rules and regulations all the time. Our engineers we use are up to date, and they try to keep us abreast of the changes as much as possible and incorporate and be prepared for them. But with water and sewer, the rules are pretty constant, for instance.
Okay.
I mean, you can't delay engineering a project because in 3 years, the rules might change. You adapt to the rules as they change. And hopefully it's not a big change.
We're given enough leeway to know that our study is still
But
going to be.
typically, once you get a permit in Vermont, a permit is good.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I think we're consensus on the 75 reserves, right? Everybody's little hands up.
And for all
At
the
least
reserves.
majority and for all the reserves.
Yeah.
Okay,
Wait a minute, not for all the other 75.
Someone recommended 90, some at 100, some 75. Do we want to just go?
Wait a minute, where are you getting those numbers from?
Oh, you're looking at these top lines? I was looking at the detailed email.
So the email that I sent has recommendations for Fund 10, Fund 50, 55, 60, and 65. So before we move off from the engineering reserves, it would be best if the board could also make a decision on those 4 funds as well. So
Yeah, that's where
I
I'm.
can make those changes.
That's what I'm. That's what I'm.
did you
looking
mention
at.
something about the tax rate not being affected
That is correct.
on those
That is
enterprise
correct.
funds? Okay,
That is correct.
so we can fund that. It's not going to be reflected in
Correct.
the tax bill.
So 50,
You mean 50?
50,000 for these funds or each, or do you want to stay with the
It's
25.
475.
75 for all of them?
Yeah. it
For each
doesn't-
one of them.
And it
Yeah.
will not change the tax rate?
No.
The
not for these.
enterprise funds have nothing to do
Okay.
with the general fund.
Oh, yeah, that's right too, yes. Okay,
Okay,
I forgot.
so we're all good?
Yeah, these are all enterprise funds. I'm good.
Just raising my hand
Yeah.
a lot.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Kim has her hand
Kim,
up.
do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I'm just trying to, I'm trying to remember which is the number for the fund. Is it 30? That's the solid waste. Okay, yeah. So I just want to make sure it's not including solid waste. So yep, I'm good. I fully support 75 in all of them.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we
All right.
are supportive of that.
Perfect. So the last 2 items to talk about in CIP are Lori's projects, and can somebody see if she's still on or not? I'm not on Zoom. so-
Lori is on Zoom. yeah.
Okay, so the 2 projects that were not one of them was not selected to be funded through ARPA. So we'd like to circle back around to that. The first, it's the Quechee Main Street sidewalk. And originally in the ARPA funding, she had asked for 260 for the town match part of it. You as a board decided you did not want to fund it from there. Is there an appetite to fund it from the general fund, which would require an $87,000 deposit annually for 24, 25, and 26? The total project is 861,000. It's 80% is being funded by a grant and 20% match by the town. I think we've talked about, it's the Willard Road to the covered bridge.
Yeah.
If you'd like to have a discussion about that, that would be number one, and Lori is available to answer any additional questions that you may have.
Okay, so that's 87 for the next 3 years. essentially.
Correct.
Any discussion on that or questions for Lori?
Seems extremely expensive.
It seems like, well. ask
No, it seems
Lori.
really cheap.
Kim has a question.
All right, Kim, we'll hear from you, and then I think we had a question for Lori.
Kim, go ahead.
Sorry, my audio still keeps cutting out, so I'm missing a little bit. Lori, do you think that I mean, we've kind of made the decision about this for ARPA anyway, but like if 3 years lapse, are you still going to be able to do this for $260,000?
Well, so what you can see on the spreadsheet is there's an assumption of a 50% increase in the value of doing this if we were to do it implemented in 26. And that's based on just sort of an overview of what we've seen as an increase of projects over the years. Our original estimate was 215. It was 861 and 215. And we are anticipating by the time we get to construction in 26, that would be the case, that we'd be up to it. This again is a similar situation that you're running into with the reserve fund for engineering, is that we have to do the engineering. We have a scoping study, which is a preliminary analysis of what needs to be done that gave us the 861. And just looking at the way prices have been going, we're assuming it's gonna, a 50% increase. So there's no guarantee on that. We have to start knocking these off. The question is whether or not you feel you can establish that at $87,000 for the next 3 cycles. And certainly one of the things you will notice is it's about the same. It is the same amount that I was putting in for engineering through the ARPA. And that actually is the kind of thing, because we're talking 20% on these. So that's exactly the same amount that you typically earmark for engineering. If we start to get the money into the reserve, we can begin the engineering process and hopefully get ahead of that number so that by the time we do go into construction, we're pretty solid with it.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lori. Discussion on this? Or questions for Lori?
I would rather see us not spend money on this and maybe focus on current infrastructure needs as well as some of this housing discussion that we're going to have. I get that there's an opportunity for a grant match, which is great, but I'm looking at this map here of Queechee, and the sidewalk goes from the covered bridge to the Whistle Pig Parlor, my understanding, and then from there up to the library or Willard Road. I think there is no sidewalk. That said, there is that entrance into the parking lot that goes all the way to the Village Green Road. So I get that walking on the street itself is not the safest, but there is a safe pedestrian passageway through the parking lot. So it's almost it's an enormous commitment for like under a quarter mile of stretch for sidewalk. I think that given the other pressing priorities we have, I would vote against this.
Okay, Lanny?
I think I would have to disagree. I think it's rather cheap based on 3 years in order to complete this project. It would be a good investment. If we wanted to, we could hate to go back to it, but put some ARPA money down in order to bring it down to start with. But
Any other comments? Mary?
Lori, is this VTrans grant likely to change over time, or is it what I'm asking, I guess, is there a limited amount of time in which to apply for it?
So there are 2 grant cycles that we have had in the past through VTrans every year. They're 2 different funds, but both of them do accommodate the infrastructure of sidewalks and bike lanes. It used to be one of them was only a 10% grant match. Now it's a 20% grant match. I don't know if those matches will increase over time. Right now, this is a very highly funded program at the state level. But again, you know, it's always competitive. We can't guarantee that we'll get the funds. But when we do go for the funds, we need to establish that we have the matching 20%.
Thank you.
A rocket, then we're gonna vote on this.
So just a question for Lori. I'm just on Google Maps going down the street view here, and who walks down this road and why? This is an honest question.
Okay, so it is a very
Oh.
highly used area. It's the core of the village, and there's a lot of activity, particularly. It's a very highly used area for tourism.
Right.
We're one of the things that has been encouraged over the years is the walkability of our villages, and encouraging people to get out, ride your bike, walk the streets, and so this is one of the ways of looking at it.
But is there anything there on that strip that can't be accessed from the back, that Village Green parking lot?
Yes.
Well, the thing is that a lot of people just don't do that. They're walking on the streets. And then there are, you're walking through a parking lot. You're not necessarily walking always on sidewalk, but that is one of the things that has been pointed out, and I respect that. But the traffic patterns that we see are people walking on the streets and not walking through the parking lot.
Right, and Mary, just to be clear, Simon Pierce is a sidewalk right up
Yeah.
to there.
Yeah.
And then if there's a
Mr. Chairman?
crosswalk across.
Per section of it, yeah.
Yeah.
I
There is
park
a section
across
of it.
to the next intersection. So it's,
Manny, and then we're gonna vote.
Yeah,
for Will.
so in order to access the Waldorf School, you need to use the sidewalk if you're pedestrian. So that's very necessary to have walkability for
and the sidewalk is right here.
Okay, you guys were gonna vote.
from the other direction.
So all those in favor of this 87 per year for the next 3 years, hands up or thumbs up?
Yeah.
Dan, Kim, Lanny. Okay, 6-1. All right, we will add that. We
I
will
vote
do that.
against.
Okay, so that was the first, I think, of the 2.
Yep, hold on one second. I
Sure.
just want to update this spreadsheet. Okay, so adding that up brings the tax revenue that's going to be required is 15,283,137. So that's a 3.37% increase, resulting in 0.0353 cents is where we're at right at the moment. The next project is for Lori as well. It's the Waterman Hill Sidewalk Project. Excuse me, the total project, 804,000 funded, 80% by the grant, which would require a 20% town match of 160,800. That would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years of $32,160.
32,160.
Correct.
Sold.
Lanny, go ahead.
Yep, sold. That's a very walkable area. You need to access that area to get down to the village. So I think it's that $32,000 over that short period of time it's a good deal.
Okay, we have questions for Lori about it, or anyone have comments on that particular request? Kim?
Thank you. Lori, does that encompass, that wouldn't encompass the bridge as well, does it?
Well, the bridge has a sidewalk on it.
Okay, and our
but-
issue with the, okay, sorry, go ahead.
It's the connectability that we're looking at here and kind of finishing this loop. And it's, you know, so that's why it's stretched out over the period of time. It could potentially really finish off this connection. So.
Thanks. I just was reminded, so the issue we were having that was brought to our attention about the sidewalks being impassable during the winter didn't have to do with the quality of the bridge sidewalk, but more about our ability to plow the sidewalks. Is that correct? I know, Lori, that's probably not a question for you, but maybe for DPW.
So you're talking about the bridge itself and the sidewalks on there?
Like
I
both
think
the Queechee Village Bridge as well as the VA Cutoff Bridge, the sidewalks
Oh, okay.
been closed during winter months because I think that because we didn't have the equipment or the capacity to clear them. And
yeah,
I mean, I don't know that that would have anything to do with the sidewalk scoping, but if the bridge is included in that, it just was reminded me that those are issues that are really need addressing.
right. The issue, I can speak to the Queechee Bridge, and then maybe something that if Jeremy's there, he can speak to it also. But that one I am familiar with, and that is a lot of that's just the spray coming off of the falls.
But it's going to kind of impact the walkability.
Right, right. So I know that's the issue of it, but I would defer to Jeremy to speak to the maintenance.
I mean, if we can't have the bridge walkable 12 months a year, then I don't see the benefit of making, really upgrading the rest of the walkability if it's not going to be accessible. I'm in support of it in generally speaking, but I do think
I can respect.
we need to have our walkways open 12 months a year as a priority.
Interesting. I understand.
Kim? Rocket?
Lori, is there any information you can provide about foot traffic on that hill? And I'm looking at it again on Google Maps, trying to figure out what the connectivity is. It just connecting people up to Route 4, is it?
Yes, it is. And then there is a population of kids that are coming from the other side that are going to school. And that has to do with a part of that connectivity on the other side of Route 4.
So kids living in that neighborhood on the south side of 4.
Right, and then coming into
Crossing.
into there, and there are recreational fields there. That's from this was the second highest priority when we did the feasibility study, and that was one of the things that came up often was having be able to get from the Route 4 corridor all the way up into the village and also into the play fields.
Okay. Thank you, Lori. Lanny?
Yeah, I gotta disagree with Kim. This area used extensively during fall foliage. So just because the sidewalk over the bridge cannot be open in the wintertime due to the spray coming off the falls, does not mean that this area is not accessed by pedestrian traffic. So there's plenty of traffic down through there, even in the wintertime. Kids that walk down through there, they perhaps go to school at Waller School, they traverse themselves over the bridge instead of going in the roadways versus going on the sidewalk. So
yeah, I apologize if I didn't mean to represent that I was opposed to the project. I'm more trying to represent that we need that to be walkable 12 months a year. It's probably how I should have phrased it. Sorry.
yeah, that's not the way it came out. Okay, yeah,
Just that Dan has.
Okay. Oh, Dan, we'll hear from you and then we'll make a decision.
I just wonder if in light of what Kim's comments and the issues we had in the past, is there some kind of like plexiglass shield or something that we can put up on that side of the bridge that would block the spray so that the sidewalk could be usable, something that could be just seasonal that could be installed that would still let the light in? Just something good for.
Yeah, I think that's a good question and something maybe we could hear back from for DPW, because I know that is a concern that's come up. Okay, let's see. By show of hands, who's in favor of the reserve funding for the Waterman Hill project?
So this is $33,000 a year.
That's it.
Yep.
Did we
Yep.
get the actual amount?
Yeah, the actual amount was 160,800, I believe, and then, so
Correct.
that's 32,160. Is that right, Gail?
That's what Lori has indicated, 32,160 annually, beginning fiscal year 24 and ending in fiscal year 28.
Okay. Lanny?
Yep.
Oh, you-
No, I'm in support of it.
Okay, let's do it again. Show of hands
Sorry.
if we're in support. Mary, Mike, Ellie, Rocket, Lanny, Dan, Kim. Okay.
Mr. Chair, may I ask Lori a question, a clarifying question?
Sure.
So Lori, I'm looking at this one and the Queechee Main Street one. Is what's the price differential on this? They're both scoping studies?
So, well, there's many factors that go into it. It's grade, it's whether or not you have any utilities and culverts. There's so many different factors that go into it. I'll be honest with you, I can't on the top of my head rattle them all off, but those are, the linear feet is not necessarily the determining factor on what, on the cost of doing improvements. And perhaps maybe Chris can be more articulate about this, but it's multiple factors.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Lori. Okay, so we've decided to go with that. Other,
32,160.
Yep.
So that wraps up the CIP.
Okay, that wraps up the CIP. Good work, everybody.
Which
I think we still have a couple other things we need to.
which now brings us to,
We're going to talk about general fund.
yeah, no, but what's the number we're at now? With that,
Sorry. Yep,
that
hold on a
32.
second.
sorry, just trying to track live.
Good.
I feel like I'm on Jeopardy.
It's great you have MuniSmart here. I appreciate
Yes, it's
that.
very nice to get these updates.
I appreciate that, yeah. Very thoughtful.
Okay, so new tax revenue required is 15,315,287, excuse me, 297. So that is 3.59% increase, which equals 0.0376 cents.
Okay. Good. Thank you, Gail. All right, so now we have some unfinished general fund decisions to make.
You do.
Okay.
I have a list. I know that most of you probably have some items as well. It would be I recommend that you maybe start from the beginning and go down through each department. And then if you have an item that's in there, the board member has an item. All the lists that I have are items that you brought to my attention. Staff does not have any additions or deletions that they would like to have made.
Okay.
So if you use the packet that I gave to you on the 10th, the only changes that are different in there, as we just talked about, is the appropriation that we needed to add.
Okay.
Is this figuring those all in, that number you just gave us? Is that figuring in all the appropriations?
Correct.
Okay, so that's good.
And I'm just asking you to use the paper copy, or you can use the electronic copy that you have that I provided to you, and go through each department, because when we get done tonight, it's going to be finalized. So that will give you an opportunity. I know there's some items in each department that have been mentioned that you would like to have changed.
Okay. Where is
Does
that
that
list?
sound like a game plan for everybody?
Yeah, that was sent out today and trying to find that one too.
This one, yeah.
Oh, that one?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Where,
What's the page on it?
This is just in the updated.
Oh, it's in the
page.
updated one.
when, you sent this out last night, right?
I sent you one last night.
Okay. Gotta get
That's
back to it.
electronic.
Okay,
that
budget
you can
discussion,
use.
open items,
Or
right?
you can use the one that I gave to you on the 10th. Because if you had items that were
Okay.
causing you heartburn on the 10th, they're still there. So
So that's the 110-23 revisions, budget discussion, open items that starts with H. Corey and goes down to the Bugby Senior Center. So does everyone have that available?
Where are
I'm
you?
not sure I do. What are you looking?
It's in Kim might not have gotten the revised.
Kim has it, but
Kim has it.
I think that what you need to do is you need to start on the budget page. Page 1 of your budget, and you need to go department by department. And then board members, those of you who have concerns in that specific department, this is your opportunity to speak about them. As you're going through them, if you miss one, I will mention it to you because I do have the list as well. Are you following me? So start on page 1
Yeah.
of your budget, which is the select board.
We're going through each one. I mean, when we have a list of like discrete things.
Well,
that-
I think,
I mean, doesn't it make sense to go through the list?
well, if you don't have any concerns in 111, you can move right along from 111. And then you can move to department 115.
This is so like 10, 11, right?
It's just a recommendation based on some of the challenging conversations that's been had in the past that individuals have felt that they haven't had an opportunity to voice their concerns about things. So however you feel, Mike, would be best to accomplish it. I'm open to suggestions. I just don't want to have anybody feel as though they haven't had an opportunity to speak.
So this is not in the newer stuff you gave us Tuesday. It's in the older stuff, right?
So I gave each of you a packet.
Yeah. That's what I'm looking at.
Tuesday.
Mike.
It's a paper copy.
Yeah.
So I guess we can just go through. I mean, does anyone have any? Because I know with the discrete list, it's stuff where we talk about like training and
You do have
police
those.
reserve.
You have those. So you have the adding staff training for the
Yep,
town manager. There was a discussion about communications for the town manager. We talked about solid waste parking, the employee banquet and bonuses. There's also, I believe that wasn't finalized about the hometown heroes, the flags for there.
yep.
Any other items that,
Did we add in the $1,000 for the part-time health officer?
we did? Yeah, that was in the list that I sent to you today. So the changes that we made, maybe that'll be easier. We can just recap the
Yeah.
changes that came from the 17th meeting.
Sure.
So Juneteenth was moved down into community activities for Parks and Recreation, so it no longer lives in the top of the budget. I did add $2,225 into community activities as well for the hometown hero flags, knowing that that's still a discussion that wasn't finalized.
Yep.
Added the 9,000 for a new petition for the senior solutions. Added the 14,500 for the PD employee wellness.
Yep.
75,000 for the PD cruiser.
Yep.
1,000 for the deputy health officer stipend. $325 for the health officer cell phone. 50,000 for the community safety review. 80,500 for the Hartford Cemetery that was previously in lot. 20,000 for the Mount Olivet Cemetery that was previously in lot. $16,350 for the Queechee Cemetery that was previously in lot. $4,200 for the West Hartford Cemetery that was previously in lot. What I removed was the libraries. And that was $112,350 for the Hartford Library that was moved to lot.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you said-
okay. 188,500 for the Queechee Library that was moved to lot. And then the final one was the Wilder Library, which was 31,860. And that was moved to lot. Making those changes allowed us to make the changes that we did this evening to date.
Gotcha.
Kim has her hand.
Kim, you have your hand up?
Am I muted? Hi. So I'm looking at that list now. Is the budget, general fund budget that's attached to that email, the one that you're referencing line by line? Just trying to make sure I'm looking at the same thing you all are, because I don't have the printed one.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah,
one from
so-
the email from today, Kim.
Okay, so
It's
general
like
fund,
in that grid.
and there's two of them. What's the revenue and expenses? Okay, all right, I'm with you. Thanks.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Roger.
Lanny, I would love to see some proposal or have a discussion about the hometown hero flags, because I felt like that was sprung on us last meeting, and I would be happy to conceptually support something like this, but would love to know more.
Sure. So talking to another veteran within our town, we're doing a lot to support other organizations, but we're not doing enough to support internally of our own community, and that's people within our community. And that's the idea behind Hometown Heroes. And it's not just limited to veterans. These are things that could be put on the post to also display like historical Hartford or other things you could act like Black History Month or something of that nature that could be put on downtown flagpoles. The initial cost of this is of course higher because you're buying both the hardware, mounting hardware and sports, and then you're buying the flags to start with, or banners. And then after that, you just be basically buying the banners and replacing them as need be. And it's a way to recognize those individuals within our community that have served this community in defense of our country, as well as to promote other interests of town, such as, like I say, Black History Month or something of that nature. And it's something to give back and recognize those that have done so much for us in the past. I don't know if you've ever been to other communities, but there's a lot of communities out there that do this, and they change the banners up on a rotating basis sometimes, or they leave the banners up strictly for the hometown heroes.
So I've seen that many places. I think it can be a fine idea and a great way to celebrate community, but this does feel like an initiative on your part that would be signing up departments that I don't know have signed up for in terms of time and effort and so forth. And the expense is unclear as to what that would actually be. I don't know if you have invoices, what do you call them? Quotes, price quotes, or what that would look like. It just.
Mr. Major, I'm sure can help with this. Mike?
Joe, if you'd like to speak, come on up.
Joe Major, White River Junction. I did price this out to see how much it will cost. There are municipalities across the country. One municipality in the suburb of Buffalo, East Aurora, New York, about half the size of this town, has something similar honoring its veterans. We don't have anything. I think it would be a great situation where we can bring the community in. We have had a bit of some stripes this year with that, and some warranted and not warranted. And I think that bringing the Legion, VFW, and also the community said, why don't we put together a system where the community can propose different people, then put them up, put pictures up, and go from there. Now, you also have to remember, this is not for this year. This is budgeted for, quite frankly, a year. I'm talking the veterans part of it, a year and a half from now, having on Memorial Day and maybe running through Veterans Day. But if you earmark this money for it now, I know that Lori had some, and very well she should, some logistical issues. We could figure that out as we go along. And then if there are issues, then address those issues. I did price out, and that's where we came up with the $2,200. So I did price that issue out. So,
I see.
all right.
Thank you, Joe.
Yes, ma'am.
I just had a quick question. Since we had a very difficult conversation a short time ago about flags.
Yeah.
I don't understand, does this take the place of the flags that already go up? Is that only for,
No.
One has-
I just don't
No,
understand.
that's absolutely. One has nothing to do with the other. My concept was to both present and current veterans during Memorial Day to honor those local veterans that have served our country and served our town as well. Has nothing to do with the current flags being put up or anything like that. I more wanted to see that money earmarked than go to Lori because she has some concerns, and rightly so. And we can solve those issues in the year and a half that we have, that this would be budgeted for, that we would go from there.
Kim,
Kim, you have a question for Joe or a comment?
Not for Joe, but just in general. And Lori can correct me if I'm wrong, but because I know that Vital Communities has already been looking at a design to propose to the design review committee, which would be a requirement for anything to go on the poles in the downtown. But I'm pretty sure that the hardware is included in the new light poles that are downtown. So that I don't think that is a needed additional expense. And I think that if any organization, and I think Vital Communities is looking at it in a project in which they would pay for the printing of the banners, not the hardware. And so I think if there were a specific organization, whether it was the Legion or VFW, that wanted to propose to the design review committee a design for a banner that would include members of service of veterans, then they could pay for them and put the flags up, or submit a petition for an appropriation and be afforded the funds that way, like any other nonprofit organization does for the town.
I had just met, if I may, I had just mentioned those two organizations. Those two organizations are not in proposing this. This is something that I came up with the help of Selectman Collins. And so it has no other organization is this. This is something that I felt that the community would put forward, and not any organization. And I think that representing and also I said nothing about downtown necessarily. I mean, this doesn't necessarily have to go downtown. It could I mean, we have 5 villages throughout this community, so it could go through other villages. I think sometimes we just look at White River Junction and think it's Hartford, and that's not the case. But as a serviceman and wanting to show honor to our fellow both past and present servicemen and women, excuse me, I think it would be a tremendous gesture.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
I'd like to see a show of hands on this one. So we have a request for $2,200, I believe. 22.5 for this. And so we'll say all those in favor of adding that request, please raise their hand. So the vote, Rocket?
Yes.
Okay. So looks like we have a majority, so we will add that. So the 2250.
2250 or 2225?
2225.
2220.
That's what
That
we,
makes me happier because that's what I put in.
yeah,
Okay. So
that's
good.
why we came apart with 2220.
Now, we have a couple items I think that we've discussed quite a bit in the past. So I'm hoping we can just bite the bullet and vote. So one is the staff training of $12,500 when we've discussed that quite a bit. The other is the town manager communications, adding 15,000. So I think, we have had these discussions about the training before, and I think we should probably just take a vote unless someone wants to say something first. Lanny?
I think it would behoove us to let the taxpayers know what the training is that we're proposing this money for.
Okay, any other comments on that, Rocket?
I agree with that. I think if we're going to take on training in our own time, it should be at our own expense. if the taxpayers want to see us trained on certain things, they can certainly come in and request. I'd be happy to
I believe
do that.
we adopted the strategic plan.
I know,
which
but I
requires
didn't adopt
that,
the strategic
so,
plan,
well,
so.
Well,
these-
but our
and-
community did.
Yeah.
Right, so I think that also just the expense of $1,000 an hour for training to me seems incredibly high, and the lack of a very specific curriculum that we would be undertaking for the rate of $1,000 an hour seems like I would rather, I follow Mary's proposal that we reduce training in good faith to the community.
Kim, if you'd like to comment, and then we're gonna vote on this.
Yeah, so there's two pieces of this. I think what Gail just mentioned was, or Mike mentioned, was staff training. So we've already pretty much decided as a board, because there are enough encumbered funds to do the training that we want for fiscal year 24, that we can actually change that line 10, 111, 315 to 0. So where it says 12.5, but what I think we're discussing now is basically moving that for staff, like town department head leadership and or town staff training.
Okay, so we would move that.
Right.
Yep. So the 12,500 would be for the town staff training.
Well, but also the funding that's still going to select board training, just because it comes from a different source doesn't mean it's not taxpayer, you know. It's being spent nonetheless, and I do think that does, just because we can zero it out of this line, doesn't mean we should walk away from that conversation.
Okay, we're gonna vote on the 12th, Lanny.
Yeah, but again, are we gonna specify what the training is that we're gonna?
It's funding the money to fund training. I don't think we have to give a detailed proposal from the select board of what it would be.
Training
Marked
is-
it as training.
For diversity and equity training as mandated by the strategic plan for equity and inclusion.
But are there free resources that we can utilize to get
There
this?
may be additional free resources, but I think we need to vote on this one. You know, we have the philosophical debate about whether training or not is necessary, and if you don't think this is a good use of our money, board members are free to vote no, but I'd like us to at least vote on this so we can.
The
So-
dollar amount again is
12,500.
Mary, do you have a lower number that we could also?
I think we'll start with 12,500 doesn't pass. We can look for another number.
Okay.
But that's what we got on our line item. So let me see a show of hands, 12,500 staff training, thumbs up. I got Kim, Dan, me, Ally, and Mary, 2 against. All right, so we're gonna add that.
So we're gonna take it from the board training and move it down to the town manager's training, correct?
I believe that's right.
So there's no impact change on the tax because we already had the 12.5 in there, but I will go in and make the actual change right now.
Thank you. The next item is the $15,000 communications that would be under the town manager. Ally?
So I know I sent the chair, the vice chair, and our acting town manager and finance director an updated figure by request. So after talking to some Corey members and following the information that we got from that Tuck Community Consulting and their recommendations, I would recommend, and we would recommend 25. And why that is because in terms of actually 15,000, I think in terms of having somebody consistently be able to offer streamlined communications and public information, I don't think 15,000 is enough. So the 25, and where I'm getting that is if we're thinking about a part-time person who could offer communications services, public information services for 50 weeks of the year, 20 hours per week at 25 an hour, and that is pretty reasonable based off of the figures that Tuck provided us, and then also kind of our own research around what's a reasonable rate for somebody of that profession. So that comes out to 25,000.
So we have a request for 25,000.
I have a question.
Yes,
Yeah.
Rocket.
Mr. Chair. What problem are we trying to solve?
So I'd recommend just looking at the strategic plan again for equity and inclusion,
I've read
because
it.
that's, okay, great. So one of the big pieces and recommendations is a public information officer. And we've had a lot of conversations also with our Corey committee that it's really hard to, even for H Corey members who are really engaged members of the community, it's really hard to find information about what's going on in town. And it feels like it's really spread out. And so based off of their recommendations, and I feel like every time H Corey has come to do a quarterly update for us, they mention the public information officer and saying, hey, where are we with this? Again, it's a key recommendation of our strategic plan that our community was really invested in and is very invested in. So happy to say more, but that's what.
So it's a
the information-
$25,000 part-time public information officer salary.
Yes. And this has been a conversation years in the making as well.
Discussion on this one before we take a vote?
Joe has this.
Go ahead, Joe.
Sorry, to monopolize the meeting. You asked the question, what problem does it solve? One of the problems is, we talked about the website. And I hear, and I have our IT director here, that he's supposed to, that's not his job to maintain our website. His job is to make sure our website is serviced, but we have no one maintaining it. That's one thing. Press releases going out, making sure information coming from our administration is going out. Having people from out of town know that when they go to our social media, that it is our town's social media. These are the things that a public information officer would do. Right now, you also have individual departments that are doing their own press releases and things of that nature. And so I think it's important that we make sure that we have both consistent and unified information coming from our town, in our town government. And I don't think we have that right now. I think this will solve that. So your question is, I think, very relevant. And I think some people in the community will want to know, well, why do we need that? Is to have a consistent, relevant, and communication coming, and particularly from that office.
Thank you, Joe. You're welcome. Any discussion before we do our show of hands?
I'm going to vote against this. I know that this has been long in discussion. I just think it's a lot of money for all of our emails, including ours, are publicly available. I think that there's nothing wrong with encouraging the community to be in touch and to inquire, and many citizens obviously take that up, but at the expense of $25,000 a year, you can get a pretty good website for a fraction of that cost, I think. So I don't know.
Vinny?
Yeah, I'm gonna vote no on this. I just don't believe that we have enough information right now to know what the actual task would be of someone for this position. So until I would know that, I can't support it at this time.
Okay. All right, show of hands, 25,000 for the communications position. In favor? Dan, Kim, Mary, Ally, Mike, Rocket, and Lanny opposed. Okay, we will add that to the budget.
And where am I adding it? I know I'm adding it in the town manager.
Town manager, yep.
Which line?
Good question.
Probably contracted services.
Contracts
Yeah.
and services.
That's my favorite.
Where was it before? We had,
Wait, I'm sorry.
This Lanny?
Contracted service, it's not a big contracted service. We're gonna have somebody on staff that does that. We're gonna,
No, it's a
Hire
lot of
someone.
money for someone, probably an independent contractor.
so we're not, okay,
It's probably.
we're gonna pay an independent contractor $25,000 to do this. And get what we want out of that.
For this position
Yeah,
and this kind of work, yeah.
I question that.
Well, okay, well, the board is.
Yep.
Made its decision on that one. The next item that's on this list is the police increasing the reserve deposit to 50 or 60,000. I don't know.
I think we can table that one
Table it.
because you are funding the one cruiser that we need
Okay,
and
yeah,
the one out of ARPA, and so keeping it at the regular reserve deposit that we have for this year would be sufficient.
That's the other items, the health officer funding, I think we did that last time. Solid waste sustainability, we voted for the survey. Parking meters, we voted to put in. The DPW engineering reserves, we voted. So the last item I see on here is the Bugby Senior Center, and there's two codes there. We did hear from Mark, I think, a couple weeks ago. We have a recommendation as well from the town manager on that. Yes, Lanny, go ahead.
Is Mark available? Is he on?
He
Zoom?
is raising his hand now.
I'd like to hear from Mark.
Okay, let's hear from Mark quickly. Hi, Mark.
Hi, everyone. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I don't know how to turn my video on, but
No, don't worry about
It's all
that.
right.
okay, yeah, it's almost like I'm there. This is great. Thanks for the chances to come back with this. So, I thought I would start with the contracted services. That's line 421 318 0200. Had a good discussion with Gail. And I got to say, it's impressive. Every department has put so much work into their budget, and she's got has to balance the big picture with individual needs. So I thought I would just give a little bit of information on how this budget line item is determined and how it's functioned in the past. So essentially, with the memorandum of agreement that the Council on Aging has with the town, this is essentially, you're basically contracting us to manage custodial services for the building, and this line item functions as a reimbursement. I'm not sure how reconciliation was done in the past. My instructions when I started in fiscal year 21 was essentially just to work with the town manager. And so working with Tracy, so fiscal year 21, we did not spend all of that money. If you'll recall, it was the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, and there was not a whole lot happening in person at the center other than Meals on Wheels and some very limited in-person services. As we headed into fiscal year 2022, Tracy and I had this, that was the year that the select board had requested an across the board 10 to 15% cut. And I was a bit concerned because we knew that at some point in that year, it was likely we would be resuming full operations and welcoming many very, very happy seniors back. And I hesitate to put it this way because I don't want to say that who the people managing the center before me were doing anything wrong, but the place really it was gross. Like there was just layers of grime and dirt over much of the public areas of the facilities. So that year we did a couple extra cleaning services to do a carpet extraction, and I don't even know when the last time that had ever been done, or if it had ever been done. I mean, it was gross. And to do deep cleaning, and for a period of time to do daily cleaning. With a facility that size, you can't just sort of do a deep cleaning and everything's clean. It takes some time to get it back to a sanitary state. And we were still under some COVID guidelines, and so sanitation was really quite important in the reopening process. So over time, though, we got it back in shape, and we were able to get back to really back where this budget line item has always been. And so the discussion then was, look, we have a 5-year memo of agreement. We will just reconcile it over time. So Tracy requested the funds for that line go back to $24,530. That gets us closer to balance. So for fiscal year 2024, what I proposed in the email I sent, it is different from what Gail proposed, but she didn't have the receipts essentially. So she gave her best number. 25,000 will reconcile it based on depending on what happens this year. Really, my only concern is that if it's 20,000, then it just continues to widen the amount that White River Council on Aging has chipped in. And if that gets so wide that we need to sort of negotiate something, that's fine. But I feel obliged to stick with what's in the memorandum of agreement, where the town has agreed to reimburse us for those costs. So that just that's sort of in a nutshell, at least how that line item was determined, and maybe a little bit of why our proposal is different from the town manager. Are there any questions or discussion?
Lanny has a question.
Yeah, Mark, how many days or how many cleanings, I suppose I should ask, does this give you per week, based on your numbers, and then based on what the town manager has suggested?
So in my proposal, right now we're at three times a week, with actually a little bit of capacity in that minimum if we need to do like a few extra cleaning tasks. It's working really well. The center is as immaculate as I've ever seen it. On the off days, there are some days we cancel that if we do a lot of community groups that come in to use the center after we're done in there. Sometimes stuff can start to pile up, but it doesn't pose a burden on staff, and the bathroom stays sanitary. I mean, that's kind of a big deal for us. You can imagine with 70 to 100 seniors a day, the bathrooms can need a little bit of attention sometimes. So 3 times a week works. My suggestion, and I actually think that by the end of this year, we'll probably come pretty close or possibly even under that $22,000 or $23,000 amount that I'm expecting it's going to cost us to provide custodial services. But we'll have to sort of see. And maybe Gail can give some insight. I don't know how this was reconciled before I started. There wasn't a permanent town manager when I started. So I'm happy to work with whatever works best for the town. This budget proposal is based on sort of what I had worked out with Tracy and the way that we read the MOA, but I'm not tied to it. I just want to make sure that we're not on the hook for more than we've agreed to. And
Okay, Lanny, follow up and Rocket.
So in the spirit of the town, what would an additional $2,000 do for you if you meet your halfway? Where would that bring you at? Would it give you enough to get your cleanings through so you would be happy and they would?
For fiscal year 24, I would estimate that 23,000 would cover our expenses for that fiscal year. It still would leave the town on the hook for some of the overage from fiscal year 22 when we arranged for an enhanced cleaning schedule. We could reconcile that in fiscal year 25. That would work for me. If something really crazy happens at the town and funding looks like a mess, I mean, we're happy to be flexible. I mean, the MOA instructs us to work cooperatively and collaboratively. So
okay,
I'm open.
Thank you. I would be willing to propose.
Rocket, you had a question or comment?
I was just wondering if Gail would be willing to provide her perspective on this.
I honestly have talked about this so much that I don't have anything else to add. The numbers that I put in there is what I recommend. I will leave it to you as a board to make the decision which way that you would like to go.
Sure. And my follow-up is with Mark. Mark, given the amount of support the town gives, do you or your staff ever clean this facility as well? Or is that a possibility, given that you're there on site anyway, or?
Yeah, no, we do. And actually in fiscal year 21, the cleaner was only coming once a week. And so staff had been redirected. Somebody still has to pay staff, and the town signed a contract essentially to pay for cleaning services. So that's what this is based off of, and like I said, I'm happy to negotiate that into the next memorandum of agreement. If the town would like to, for example, I don't know, come up with a more frequent reconciliation or some sort of cost control to make sure that, we don't have to do this every year. I'm open to it, but as it stands, this is a cleaning service that, that I worked out with the town, and this is what it cost, and the town's sort of on the hook to reimburse us. So that's sort of what I'm working with.
Thanks, Mark. Mary has a question and Lanny has a question.
Just to help me to clarify, I have in my notes that you wanted to add back 4,530 to the, and then I heard you say, and maybe it went into a different part of my brain. I heard you say 5,000 would do it, and now we're talking about 2,000. So I'm a little confused about.
Yeah, well, so our fiscal year starts in. Our fiscal year starts in October. Back before Tracy had left, level funding, I mean, that gets us, within like $500 of reconciliation. And again, that's going to change based on the actual expense that happens in fiscal year 23. We're not going to exceed $24,000. So,
So are you asking for $4,000?
I would, if the select board approves 24,530, that's fine. But again, that still leaves a balance on this account to reconcile before the end of the memorandum of agreement. So,
Mark, can you send us that MOA?
I believe I did a while back, but I can send that again.
Yeah, it's.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Lanny has a question.
And then actually not a question. I'd
comment.
like to make a proposal that we split the difference and offer 22,265, which will bring us halfway.
Offer 22,60.
22,265.
22,265, essentially splitting the difference.
Split it in half.
I haven't seen anything that would make me move off of what the town manager has recommended, so I'm going to vote against doing that, but I will.
Okay, I'll just to add in, I mean, we're going to bill the town for the difference at some point anyway. I mean, that's ultimately, the question is, do you want to reconcile it for fiscal year 2024, or do you want to wait until 2025? If the town does not wish to fulfill that agreement, we can deal with that through negotiations, or, for the amount, I don't see any need to get council involved, but, this is an expense that we did.
Thank you, Mark. Mark, we hear where you're coming from. We have a comment from Kim or a question, and then we're gonna vote on that.
Gail, is your interpretation of the memorandum of understanding that we are going to have to pay that money eventually?
No, it's not. And I think, looking at cleaning contracts across the town, the amount of money that's being spent at the Bugby Center for cleaning is very close to what we pay to clean this entire building 4 times a week. So I think that, it's a bigger discussion about cleaning, but as I stated earlier, I stand behind what I put in the budget, and Mark has indicated we have had several conversations and we're kind of at an impasse, and I let him know that it's the board's decision to make.
I would like to propose that we cut the funding to 15,000.
What?
Okay, we have a proposal on the table that we
That's
would
1%.
split the difference, 22,265. All those in favor, raise their hand.
Where's that coming from?
Manny, is that a vote for yes?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't see anyone else supporting that. How about we just keep it at the town manager's recommendation, which is 20? Any favor in that?
Rocket.
So-
I'm gonna vote against this because I honestly don't feel like we're being treated with the respect of being spoken to candidly. And I feel like this has happened several times now with Mark Rowley and Bugby Center. And I'm very supportive of the center, but I don't think that we should be fleeced for taxpayer money based off of misrepresentation. I don't think that's a respectful way to behave at all in interaction with the select board. So I vote-
Rocket, how am I fleecing anybody?
Mark, sorry, we did the vote.
I
And
don't
we're done.
think
We're
that-
going to stick with the town manager's recommendation. We thank you for your comments and appearing, but we're moving on from this discussion. All right, so we have left the employee bonuses. We have an open list, Gail, still, a couple things.
Yes.
Okay,
Employee bonus, employee banquet and employee bonuses, and that was one of the items that Kim had, so I would ask that she speaks regarding that.
yeah, Kim, if you'd like to chime in on that.
Sure. I think we've had the employee banquet for many years, and then during COVID, we didn't do it. And I think we opted to offer a modest financial bonus, like a holiday bonus for all staff members, kind of in lieu of the banquet. And as we're sort of coming out of that scenario, I'm just wondering, like, I think that staff probably appreciates the banquet, but I wonder if it wouldn't be that much of an impact on the tax rate if we were to also consider doing some kind of modest, just like maybe a gross, before taxes, like $150 per employee holiday bonus, in addition to bringing the holiday banquet back. And I was just curious if the board, how they felt about that.
Do you have any financial numbers on what that would be?
Well, I mean, how many,
You
what
know.
are we, 109? What's the total number of employees right now? I think I came up with 100 employees times 150, and that's 15,000. But it would obviously need to incorporate the payroll tax and things like that. So I had suggested in my email to, I don't know if I sent it to the whole board or just you guys, but I think I said 15 to 20, maybe 20,000, including covering the taxes. And I would defer to Gail to see if she thinks that's enough with the number of employees that we have. And yeah, if anyone else has opinions, I mean,
What's it gonna raise our rate to?
Right, so we did do the holiday bonuses, a bonus because we didn't have the banquet this past year.
Mhm.
And I believe that the net amount of the gross amount of the checks that was $115 or $125 or something like that. And many individuals, after you take out taxes and retirement, because we're required to do that.
Yeah.
Many ended up with $25 or less.
Okay,
So,
not very much.
okay.
Although I think it's a great, great recommendation, in the end, many individuals end up with not enough to even go to McDonald's to get a couple meals, let alone to
Yeah.
go somewhere.
And the banquet was well liked when it was being. Do you know? I mean, is there?
Yeah, so we had made a kind of a seismic change in how we were doing the banquet, and then COVID hit. We
Yeah.
had initially done it at a little bit of a more formal setting. And after surveying staff, we decided that let's do something a little more casual, local, a little more fun. And then people, I think, were excited for that change of venue. And then COVID hit, we didn't get to do it.
Okay.
So the holiday banquet, I think, was a lot of fun. I also think that people people don't like them and they like getting a check, quite frankly.
Sure.
So, it's also sort of the meaning behind it, is it worthwhile to do a holiday banquet? Is it a good thing? Does it bring people together, socializing, staff, having a good time? I think that's worthwhile.
Do you remember what the budget was?
Yeah, it was about. So we used to do, so we have, in that budget line is it also included longevity awards, which are both
Okay,
cash
yeah.
and clocks and plaques, which changes year to year, depending on how long people have been here and who's getting them. I would say, I think we used to put aside, and this was before COVID, about 12.
Yeah, 12 to 15.
About 12 to 15.
Okay.
And that's back in, right? Is that back in the town manager's budget?
Yes.
The banquet is.
Okay,
Just,
so-
can I ask one more question about that?
Yep, given them money.
Is it possible to do things like at the banquet, give all of the employees like gift card, like even a gas card, like give them something of a gift like that, that doesn't have to be taxed with payroll? Like if we gave every employee like a $50 gas card or something like that? I don't know. I guess I'm just trying to think of the way to go around.
I may defer to you as far as tax. I don't know if that has to be taxed or not. We used to be able to do it because Leo would buy all the prizes and the gift cards himself, give them to all of us. But we haven't approached that yet. And to be honest with you, I don't know what the answer is as far as if it would be taxable or if it would just be a gift. I would imagine there's got to be some way that it would just be a gift.
Any of
Okay,
the-
well,
Yeah, you all set, Kim?
I am, thank you, sorry.
Yeah. Now, I think it's very important for us to get our town employees together. If they should choose not to come, that's their choice. But I think it's extremely important for us to gather our town employees together, for us to be able to show the kind of support that we should be giving to our town employees and recognition for their service to the town. Longevity awards, other awards throughout the year that the people should get. It's important. We need to let the people at Town of Hartford that work for us know that it's not just a check. We're trying to drive morale up in this town. That's the way to do it.
Rocket? I agree with Kim. I agree with Lanny. I don't think we need to, I think we can trust the leadership to figure out the best way to spend it. I think at our level in this moment, I would vote to approve.
Okay, and we've got some money in the budget for it, right?
We do. We currently have $13,750. And that, as Paula explained, includes longevity awards
Yeah.
as well as the banquet.
So is there an appetite to go above that?
So I feel like I saw an email from Kim and Gail, $20,000 number floated. Was that, did other people see that? I would be comfortable at the $20,000 level. I mean, and just trust the leadership to expend that judiciously.
Okay. Other thoughts, discussion? Since we have a proposal to increase that from 13.5 to 20.
Yeah, just want to know what the final number is.
So if I increase it by 20,
Increase it, yeah, 220.
We've just done a lot of additions here, so
We'd be increasing by 6,500.
we've increased it, other things though, so we've added other things. I want to know where we're at. We haven't been tracking exactly all the way.
all right. So now we're at tax revenue needed is 15,346,547.08. That represents a 3.8% increase, and in dollars and cents, it's 0.0398. And that includes all of the adjustments that we.
All the adjustments, all the appropriations, And that's the end. Appropriations can't come in anymore, so that's the end number.
Okay, so we have the motion to increase that to a total of 20,000 for employee staff banquet recognition. Show of hands for support. Looks like we've got unanimous support. Okay, so we will add that. Now, are there additional items? that we
I have
need to
nothing
decide?
else.
I don't have
I've
anything else.
crossed off all the list items.
Ally, and
And I-
then
Were we gonna ever revisit the peer support advocate?
So the peer support advocate position is still in the budget. It is in there. I'm still struggling to get any information from HCRS for the individual that was providing the services. The last conversation that I've had with them is I put their contract on hold because we haven't received any reports, and so until we receive the reports and or the peer support person has interaction with our departments, I can't in good conscience pay an invoice for services that we're not receiving. So the plan in 2024 is, I've been working with the police department. They feel that having a part-time, another part-time social worker would be very beneficial to that department. And so that's the goal of the 24,000 that's in the budget for 2024, is to remove the peer support position and to start with a part-time social worker in the same capacity that Kelsey's in right now.
So when,
Rocket, do you have a question?
Oh, I have just two items. that
Okay.
I think we need to I would like to discuss. The one is the Friends of the Quechee covered bridge. Just wanted to bring that up. We never formally voted on whether to include that or not. Again, I think personally it's a bit of a big bite to chew. So I would happily, I would be willing to vote against it, but I did want to honor the fact that we had discussed it, that the request was made, that I did speak to that citizen question about it.
Okay, do you want to do that now? I mean, does someone want to make a motion to approve that, or we just, it's just not something we're interested in doing?
we don't make a motion for it, it's not proving it. So just
So I guess my guess is with the temperature of the board is just to pass on this.
Yeah, I mean, if someone wants to make a motion for it, again,
Yeah.
otherwise we're just not gonna.
No, I just wanted to make sure that we went through like the
Yep.
process of giving them that respect. The other thing is, I assume that I'm going to get mightily voted down on this, but I did have a conversation with the citizen who may want to speak on it as well. The community safety review, I know this is also part of the strategic plan. I looked at the RFP. I cannot see for the life of me what the value of spending $50,000 on an outside consulting firm to identify safety issues when we have robust departments and an active local government, broadcast meetings and all these things. I'm having a very difficult time understanding where we would justify, why we would justify spending that gigantic expense on this. And I was wondering, Kim and I exchanged a couple emails about it, but I thought this would be worthy the time to bring it up, since it is taxpayer money going into the budget.
Do you have a motion, let's strike it?
Sure, yeah, I guess I could make a motion to strike it.
Any discussion before we take that up?
I mean,
Ally?
just from my perspective, and again, I think this is something that was coming up in H Quarry meetings and otherwise is, and I think what the RFP details is that it's a community engagement process, and I think that's where, you know, our public safety departments are incredible, and we're so lucky and grateful. And I don't know that they have the capacity to, while yes, they're doing a lot of community outreach in their work, what this offers us is also a third party that can offer us additional information and another lens and another way of approaching community engagement. So it's as much about the process as it is about the outcome of what information we learn from that process. And the RFP, I think, details really, it's a really, I think if done right and if done as intended in the RFP and with the intention is really to reach a broad swath of folks that we may not always hear from. About, you know, how public safety is working for them, how maybe it's not working for them. Public safety is a conversation that continues, I think, to come up, certainly feels like almost daily, you know, at least in my tenure on the board. And so I think it's something our community really cares about and that we wouldn't have the capacity to do otherwise. So I'm very supportive of it.
Lanny?
Yeah, I, in a way, I agree with Rocket. I don't understand exactly what we're going to be getting from this, but it's a hill that I'm not willing to die on, so.
Okay, well, Rocket, if you wanted to propose a motion that, well, the language for a informal vote, you
Sure,
can
yeah.
do so, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I would propose that the board strike the community safety review from the 2024 budget. I think that's the motion.
Okay.
And then I have a comment of discussion, which is just that.
Wait,
reading-
it hasn't been seconded, point of order.
Well, we're sort of,
I think we're in a second.
it's kind of informal, like a show of hands, I think.
Thank you all.
Okay, then it's not a motion, right? Okay.
Yeah, it's not really about, all right, so the basic idea is like, if you say yes, if we have a majority says yes, we'll strike that community safety funding, and if a majority say no, we will keep it in the budget. It's just, you gotta remember that, it's sort of backwards. So I guess the question, unless you want to say something before we take that tally.
Yeah, I do, which is just to advocate for this motion to strike, which is that I feel like the point, one of the point of the local government is to serve the people. And it is in that service to the people that we are accessible, and that any citizen in town has the opportunity to voice their concerns, their complaints, their grievances with the town. So to even do this, to me, is suggestive that the town, that something is fundamentally broken about our system of government. We have open meeting laws, we have public meetings, we have publicly accessible contact information. We are readily available throughout the community physically. When you look at the scope of work, I wonder what about this is going to elicit statistically significant feedback and data from the community, and avoid a selection bias where they have charrettes or events that people who are already predisposed to give information might already come to us. I don't really see how spending $50,000 is going to change the quality of our government or our service to the people.
Okay, thank you, Rocket. Those in favor of striking the community safety review funding, raise your hand. Rocket, those opposed, raise your hand. Okay, so 6-1. Is that our last unfinished item?
I have nothing left
I don't
on
have
my
anything else
list.
to
If any of you have any items that you have left open, we've accomplished ARPA, we've accomplished CIP, and where you sit right now is, as I said before, you're at a 3.8 overall increase,
Okay.
which results in 0.038% dollars, excuse me, cents. That's where you're at right at the moment.
Okay. Anything else we need to do as a board? I know that we've got the warning review and approval, awarding contracts, so those things
You're going to be doing that on Tuesday.
on Tuesday.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's very important that you're all here because you need to sign it.
Yeah, so we'll actually be doing the warning review and approval on Tuesday. So that's, yeah, we should be here for
One more,
that.
one
Yes,
more
ma'am?
thing. Who's going to present this budget?
Well, we'll discuss that and figure that out.
You win.
We're doing executive session. No.
I don't think we have anything to do. Okay, anyhow, let's get back to that. So I think that ends all of our sort of our items. We have no consent agenda.
Correct.
We have an executive session listed. I don't have anything more to talk about unless Paula, Gail do. We'll have something for Thursday though.
We will.
Yeah,
No, I think on Tuesday.
or Tuesday.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah,
On
so Tuesday we'll executive session.
Tuesday, a couple of you had some items that you were going to collect together and
Yeah.
report back on.
Exactly, and we will do that on Tuesday. So I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
And a second from Rocket. All those in favor say aye.
Yep.
Aye. Thanks, everybody. Very good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.